Hello, I'm WEIU digital TV producer Ramin Kerbasian. One of the programs that we're honored to have worked on here at WEIU through the years was the This Is Our Story series, a series we created in 2014, totaled 19 programs across central and southeastern Illinois. And we were helped by outstanding storytellers through these communities. Just over 500 storytellers told almost 490 stories on the This Is Our Story series. Myself and the Our Story team at WEIU through the years: Lori Banks, Fred Peralta, Lacey Spence, Jana Johnson, Keanne Armstrong, Kelly Goodwin, and Wanda K. Robinson. We worked together to create a program that we are truly and honored to have produced here at WEIU. We always wondered, what if we put together an all-star type Our Story program of a collection of some of the stories through the Our Story series? And well, we have it for you now, a producer's picks of 40 stories through the This Is Our Story series. Each program will be represented with 2 stories, with the exception of the 2 programs that had the most stories in the This Is Our Story series. Paris and Charleston will each have 3 stories in this producer's picks. 40 stories across the This Is Our Story series, and we hope you enjoy it here on WEIU Digital TV.
In 1859, Bernard Hodebeck started a boot and shoe store. He was the owner, the proprietor, in downtown Effingham. And over the course of the years, it changed locations a couple times, but the last location was at 115 West Jefferson Street, where Brown's Drugstore is now. Bernard and his wife, Elizabeth, had 7 daughters, the Hodebeck sisters. In 1885, Bernard retired, and so the 2 oldest daughters opened a millinery store for women in that location that had been the dad's boot and shoe store. Of the sisters, one kept the books, one fired the furnace, one did the general cleaning. 3 of them usually were clerks in the store. One of them did a lot of the cut work that they sold, and that was Catherine Hodebeck Stockman, who was my grandmother. Their advertising was done by postcard, and they sent these to their clientele in the mail. A postcard for Easter would there would be a lady in a beautiful hat, or there would be maybe even just a hat, and there would be a very, very flowery Victorian verse with it. In the spring, women would bring in their hat, and then the Hodebeck sisters would take off the winter things, the feathers, and the dark grosgrain ribbon and the fur, and they would put on the ribbons, the colorful ribbons, and the flowers, and make it for spring. And then in the fall, they would reverse the procedure. They even crocheted a beautiful dress and hat for a little great-granddaughter by the name of Mary Ellen Eversman. And it happened, I guess, on that day that this sweet child was not particularly interested in standing there in that outfit and being the sweet little girl, that they'd hoped for in the picture. The Hodebeck store closed in 1925 with the death of Mary, one of the original proprietors. And that was after they had served Effingham for 40 years. And so I think they had a large part in making downtown Effingham a wonderful place that people from all over the area, women especially, would want to come.
I was at the museum when it opened, and we stood in line before we got inside to get our tickets to walk around in the museum. So after I got in, they said it starts on the outside. I went outside and there was all these flags sticking up. Do not touch. It's like a sign says wet paint. I guess it is wet, ain't it? Well, that's what I did. I touched, and our flag wasn't there. So I go in and talk to the curator and says, the flag's out there, but our patch is not. I said, well, we don't have anything to do with that. It's the Department of the Army. And I wore my uniform, and I was the only one that wore my uniform during the 65th anniversary of the Holocaust. I was the only one with the uniform, and there was representing 20-some divisions. I got a list in my book of all the divisions that were there. But I was the only one, so I stood out like a sore thumb, you know. I invited me, see. And I was sitting right here in this chair, right in that one, and I got a phone call from the museum, and I talked to them, and I said, yeah, I'm coming. Are you wearing a uniform? Yeah. I said, well, you have a uniform cleaned and pressed. You know you're going to get a medal from President Clinton. I said, no, I didn't know it. Yeah. So I thanked him and hung up and picked up my phone book here, and I looked up Holocaust Museum. I called them right back. They said, oh, Eldon, we just talked to you. I said, that's what I wanted to know. I thought somebody was pulling my leg. Well, you would think so, too. That medal is for liberating concentration camps. I represent every liberator, so everybody in the division is considered a liberator if their division liberated, you see. So that meant in the division, a couple thousand or more could have done what I did, several thousand. But I was chosen because I could wear my uniform and the girls had got acquainted with me. That's why I was chosen. Not for nothing that I did, no. I just did what thousands did. They gave us a sacked lunch when they went to this big building. When I stepped off the stage with my sack lunch, I saw a sign on top of the table. So it was the name of, I don't know what it was. Anyway, I was looking around, this lady says, what are you looking for? I says, I'm looking for the names on the tables of the prison camps. Says, which one did you liberate? I said, Salzwedel. She grabbed me like that and starts crying. And my grandson over there says, Aunt Karen, Grandpa's making that lady cry. So here come Karen. And the lady was saying, you're the reason I'm here and just carrying on something terrible. Hell, I didn't realize it. She'd been looking all these years for somebody from the 84th Division that she knew who liberated the concentration camp, the Salzwedel. It was all women. And they were, most of them, Jewish women from the eastern there, you know. And they had a lot of the little girls in this camp, too, and they all wearing the yellow Star of David on their back. And heck, I couldn't understand why, you know. But I wasn't in that camp either. You'd have to be there to understand how them people feel about it, you know. So one of the editors of the paper, the T-Town paper, he saw it in the paper, so he called up the woman, got her, and said, yeah, she was coming out, you know, later. So he knew she was coming to see me. So her and her husband stopped to see me, and he was out here when they stopped, you know. And then she wrote me that letter, you know. I put that letter's in there that she wrote me. And she was there right at that table right there. The lady come, they stopped. Oh, yeah. I said, well, hell, I had nothing to do with that. Said, you took her to the hospital. I said, I didn't take her. I was the first wave. Yeah. Some guy was carrying the American, so I carried the Irish flag the first time. So I told him I could come back next year to carry the flag. So being as I could wear my uniform, that added to the parade for that. So that's why I get to go carry the flag, because I wear my uniform and I go back every year. I'm going back this year. Well, I think it's a pretty good honor, yeah.
Oh, the Mad Gasser Mattoon. It is it's one of the great unsolved mysteries of Mattoon, Illinois, probably, period. Really, maybe nationwide. The story goes back in 1944, from August 31st into September 13th. There were 21 reported cases of an assailant, an unknown assailant, entering individuals' homes, spraying them with some type of gas, whether it be ether gas. Nobody really knows what kind of gas was used. And individuals would report anywhere from being nauseous to dizzy to being paralyzed. Why these attacks were happening, we don't know. We don't know who the individual is responsible for these attacks, even though there's some speculation of who or what may have been involved. But the first such reported attack, happened on the evening of August 31st in 1944. An individual named Urban Raef reported a kind of a foul-smelling, strange odor in the house, and reported that he was becoming dizzy and nauseous. When his wife, Mrs. Raef, tried to get out of bed to go see if it could have been something maybe from the stove, she was paralyzed and could not move. The largest report came a few days later when a woman named Mrs. Kearney, on September 1st, her and her daughter became the first reported attacks to the media. And it's oftentimes referred to as the first actual attack, but it was really the first one that the media got a hold of, and then it became the media sensation. They too experienced similar symptoms: dizziness, nausea, paralysis. Ms. Kearney's legs went numb, and they're also the ones that claim to have been given a description of the individual, who was a tall individual, thin individual wearing dark colors and a dark, tight-fitting stocking cap. Kind of almost like you would see a lot of burglars and perpetrators back in the 1940s, a very similar description of those individuals. The last reported case was a woman by the name of Bertha Birch. She was the last person to report this. What's interesting about Ms. Birch's report is she claimed that it was a woman dressed like a man, and there were high-heel shoe prints out in the yard outside of her house. But nevertheless, this has created a lot of panic in Mattoon. Citizens really started to patrol neighborhoods with guns and so forth. That is starting to alert the local authorities. The FBI was even notified of these strange incidents involving gassings, home invasions, and so forth. We never find a perpetrator. There's no physical evidence that anybody was gassed, that anybody was physically assaulted. So the whole question now is what caused these particular, instances. There's been a few explanations over the years. An individual named Farley Llewellyn. Farley Llewellyn was a Mattoon native. He was a chemistry student at the University of Illinois. And Farley was, how to describe him, he was described as being a loner, and he had a drinking problem as well. It's also reported that Farley had a secret chemical lab in his home, and that Farley could have possibly been the Mad Gasser. Why he would have been gassing these certain individuals, it's not really clear. An interesting fact is that Many of the early victims just happen to be people that he graduated high school with. The most commonly accepted theory is mass hysteria. Why was one attack reported? We really don't know, but we get one attack, another attack, soon we have 21 different reports of attacks, then we have a community that's panicking. And that's really what has been decided, that it was largely mass hysteria. The American Psychological Association determined that it was pretty much a prime candidate for an episode of mass hysteria. And what's really interesting about that, there's only been 2 local events that has reported that degree of mass hysteria, the Mad Gasser and the Salem witch trials.
This is a story about Harry Truman's stop in Mattoon in the 1948 presidential campaign.
Well, it was a whistle-stop train campaign, and the morning that he was to arrive in Mattoon, my uncle, who was a precinct committeeman, come to our home and asked that if my sister and I would present the president and his wife and daughter with a bouquet and boutonniere.
Fortunate to witness the first whistle-stop campaign, and it was sort of a modern thing at that point in time. It had never been done to that extent across the country before, and Truman needed some, kind of tricks like that, or new campaign ideas to energize the campaign.
Well, it was a surprise to me. Mattoon was enthusiastic. It was unbelievable. Whenever we got down to the train station, the New York Central train station, which is where the YMCA parking lot's at, the place was full of people. And this was like at noon, and he would not be there didn't get there till almost 5 o'clock. Drizzly, wasn't raining, but it was just almost raining.
Illinois was one of the 3 large electoral voting states. I believe they had 28 electoral votes at the time, and California and Ohio were all crucial. All 3 of those states Truman had to win, and he won them all by less than a percentage point.
Well, then we had to go have a meeting with the Secret Service, and they went through the flowers to see if there's anything that shouldn't be there. And they really went through them. I thought they were going to ruin the flowers. No, the crowd got bigger and bigger. They estimated it was between 6,000 and 8,000 people there. The train pulls up and everybody gets quiet, and Mr. Hill, who was the county chairman, takes the podium on the back of the train, and he introduces a few of the political leaders of the party. Then he introduced Charles Schuman, who was from Sullivan. He was the president of the American Agriculture Association. And he introduced Senator Scott Lucas, who was an Illinois U.S. Senator.
Scott Lucas was instrumental in the campaign, and as Bill mentioned, Harry Truman and Scott Lucas had been friends in the United States Senate for about 8 years, neighboring states, Illinois and Missouri. And Scott Lucas emerged to become the majority leader of the Democrat Party and of the majority party of the Senate. Very powerful position. And so with that combination of Scott Lucas, senator from Illinois, being the majority leader in the Senate, they had this friendly relationship. There was some political power, and Harry Truman needed that in that campaign.
Then Senator Lucas introduced the president. Then the president started in with his campaign speech. It was about a 10 or 11 minute speech. Basically all he hit on labor and farm problems, and that was it.
A lot of the rural agriculture interest, and this is one of the reasons why Truman's campaign speech here was tailored for that, had been bent towards the Democratic Party because of the New Deal policies that Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman had helped establish. And so they were trying to win over that vote and reinforce what was going on in those areas of policy and agriculture. And so Truman, he didn't take that vote for granted, but he just reinforced again and again how he had supported those policies for the farmers in the rural areas. And he knew he probably wasn't going to carry the South. Right before that election, one of the main things that Harry Truman had done and is still known for today was desegregate the United States Armed Forces. and that pretty much lost him the South, broke up some of the Democrat vote, and then you see the emergence of Strom Thurmond in the Dixiecrat Party. So he had to cobble together some different variables to win that campaign, and you can see it wasn't easy, but he was very, very adept at doing that.
At the end of his speech, he wanted to introduce his family to the crowd, who was his wife Bess and his daughter Margaret. And after he introduced them, then they had us go onto the back of the train and present bouquets of flowers to the Mrs. Truman and Margaret, and a boutonniere to Harry Truman, and then he introduced us to the crowd. Well, then, we departed from the train, and then they allowed about 10 or 12 people to come on and shake hands with him. And it was pretty, the security was tight, because that was the end of it. Well, election day, we thought he got beat. Everybody thought he got beat. And then I don't know when it was, sometime in the morning after the election, he found out he had won, and won pretty handily. But the newscasters and the pollsters just didn't think he had a chance.
Truman won, but only by less than 1 percentage point, so it was very close and very crucial that he did. And as a matter of fact, after that, Dewey always kind of credited losing the election to the Midwest rural vote. So it was very important that Truman stop in even the less densely populated areas like Mattoon at the time.
Well, when you're 12 years old, I wasn't in that much awe of it. One of the things that I'll tell that I wasn't going to tell, but when he introduced us, he introduced me as Joe. And I corrected him. And he told the whole crowd about it and had a big laugh about it. And so I always remembered that I did correct the President of the United States once.
I feel like my dad was one of the contributors to the success and progress of Charleston. My father was born in 1896, Ernest W. Inyard, the 5th child of Mary and George Washington Inyard in Olney. He had a shoe repair shop in which his children worked as they grew up. When he was in the 9th grade, his father approached him and requested that he lay out of school for a year in order to help more or less feed the family, and he agreed to that. And of course, becoming very skilled at shoe repairing, he never did get back to school. Went to work in Taylorville for the Summers Clothing and Shoe Company store, and he decided while he was there, he had this dream. He would like to have a shoe store of his own. In 1921, he married my mother in Olney, Pauline, and he got on the train, came to Charleston, and opened a shoe store on what is now Whiskey Row. One of our special customers was a lady from Eastern, a physical education teacher, Miss McAfee. She came into the store and she said, Mr. Inyard, I'm expecting about 50 freshmen or girls this year at Eastern, and we have decided to have a uniform for physical education. And they all will have black uniforms, and I'd like for them to have a black shoe. So I could see her catalog. She picked out the shoe style she wanted them to have, which was a high top, all black shoe, that is black canvas, black eyelets, black laces, black soles, black rubber. During the 40s and 50s, I guess you might say we had the heyday of the square, because there were activities on 3 levels. During that time, he was also available, you might say, to various discussions and people who would want to contact him. So he would keep on repairing shoes, pounding away, listening to them, giving him a good ear, but getting his work done. Ernie's grandkids, my children, were on the verge of needing jobs. Well, they were perfect, bringing them in, teaching them how to fit and sell shoes. That was probably my biggest blessing from the business, because I was able to get the ear of my kids and develop a relationship with each of them so that we had something in common and they learned something from the family. In 1985, my dad passed away, but he gave us the inspiration and the ideas and the guidance to develop the business even further. Standing alone as we were, without the benefit of additional traffic, we thought this was probably a good time to close, and we had a going out of business sale. It was a big adjustment. My dad, a humble man from Olney, with a little experience, a little money, and a little formal education, was able to achieve his dream of having a fitting shoe service with good quality shoes. Since we were here 71 years, I like to think that the impact that we might have had on the city of Charleston was a positive one, and that we made a worthy contribution.
When I was a child, my dad did a presentation on this trip that 5 men and himself, 6 men total from Charleston, took. And in 1966, they embarked on an adventure of a lifetime. The men from Charleston who went on this trip were my dad, Gene Harpster, Don Drake, Stan Tyler, Doc Harold Marker, Judge Senderman, and Ivan Prather. And so at the beginning of the trip, all the men, they're all packed, and everybody had a new hat. They drove in a little Greenbrier van out to Colorado. They were forced to spend a couple of days in Las Vegas. And then they flew 300 miles up the river. They got to their starting point. There were 40 people on the trip total from all over the world, and they headed out. They ended up in situations that were just crazy. There are a few different things. The first night, my dad put his sleeping bag up on a big, huge boulder, and they all made fun of him and said, why are you doing that, you know? Oh, I don't want what's crawling down there to get in my sleeping bag, you know. As the presentation goes on, there are more pictures of the hats, and he says, you know, well, you can see the hats are starting to look a little worn, and we got a little beard growth going on everywhere, except for Judge Senderman. He said he shaved every day because he may have to make a decision at any time, and he wanted to be prepared. At night, they would end up having to, you know, start to get dark. That was the problem, because they would end up having to start to search for somewhere to pull over to sleep for the night, or pull over for the noonday meal, or whatever. And when it started to get dark and sun would start going down, they would start to worry and think, okay, we got, you know, because you don't want to be caught out on the river at night. And we're talking massive rapids and places of calm, but beautiful scenery and things that people in this area just had not seen before. One time, they got very close to a jagged wall. They hit the wall. They were afraid that it was going to end up busting one of the sections. At the end of the trip, Doc Marker, and they got off the boat, they took a few pictures. Doc Marker took that hat off his head and threw it in a big trash barrel. Well, Ivan Prather lived next door to him in Charleston. So once Doc Marker and Stan Tyler had to go back early on the plane. So Ivan went to the barrel and grabbed Doc Marker's hat, old, tattered, nasty, torn hat, out of the barrel and took it home. Well, when he got home, he walked in Doc Marker's back door and put it on the kitchen table. And I heard this story over and over, as a child, that, and Doc Marker came home, thought he was losing his marbles because here's this hat that he left in Colorado in a barrel. He would love it. I mean, he would love the fact that I'm sharing this story about these men who were from Charleston, who all played a big part in Charleston, each one of them, lawyer and doctor and judge and postmaster, and business owners, and that they were with him on this adventure, that these 5 men from Charleston were able to leave our small town for a moment, go on the adventure, and then bring the adventure back to Charleston to share with the people here. So I think he would be really excited. Of course, you would have him talking for hours about it. And we don't have that much time.
John Dom was a vital community member here in the Charleston area for many years. He touched a lot of lives. He was a mentor to not only myself, but to many people. And his mentoring and his touch on many people's lives is still rippling through the community and has taught many students how to be leaders themselves in their community and are leaders in the Charleston community today. John Dom also joined band when he was young. He was a trombone player and had great role models in the band, high school band, because he set third chair to 2 young men who later went on to be professional musicians. When John and his family moved to Charleston from Centralia, John was a band director here in the Charleston community for over 26 years. And during that time, he taught at the middle school, high school, and Jefferson. He drove his VW bug around. That was his mode of transportation, and kind of noted for that. John also had a huge role model when he was in Scouts. His Scoutmaster was a big part of his life. When John's oldest son, John Jr., when they were here in Charleston, John wanted to make sure his son was in Scouts also. And John volunteered as a parent volunteer until the Scoutmaster here in Charleston retired. Then John stepped up. Nobody else wanted the role, so John, of course, stepped up. John Dom was also on the Charleston Recreation Board here in Charleston for 20 plus years. He was very involved with the pool and the improvements on the city pool, and he was also very involved. We had the band shell at Kiwanis, the white one, but when the city sewer line went through, they had to tear that down, and John and some city officials were very instrumental in getting the awesome facility that we have now at Kiwanis Park. Because of the financial situation the school district was in, John wanted to see that there was avenues for musicians to continue, and so he started the Charleston Community Band back in 1977. I got to join that the fall of '79, and when John wasn't able to continue, I told him that I would continue that. In 2012, the band shell that is at Kiwanis Park in Charleston was dedicated to John Dom for all of his years of service, for his mentoring of many musicians, for his starting of the Charleston Community Band. The night of the dedication was very special for not only John and his almost entire family, but for all of us as musicians and people that he had touched our lives in a special way. The night for the concert, I chose most of John's favorite songs, and he sat there and tapped his foot and was just enjoying every moment of it. It was a warm evening like most of our concerts are, but a lot of people spoke highly of all the things that John has done in their community and how their lives were touched. His passion was to teach and to be a good leader and to instill life lessons to students and be a good role model to them, whether it be through music or scouts or through the rec board. John touched a lot of lives in a positive way. I believe that if John was here today seeing us tell this story, he'd not want us to be doing it in the first place because he didn't want the recognition. He worked hard and he just wanted to touch lives because he had great role models growing up and he wanted to touch lives in the same way.
The history of the bands in Paris, Illinois and Edgar County have been rather successful and eventful throughout the years. I can tell you that many years ago the band program basically started in 1938 with a gentleman by the name of Lou Waterloo. Mr. Waterloo, it has been said, was also associated with the John Philip Sousa band. Mr. Waterloo came on in 1938 and I think went for about 10 years to 1958 when Cal Stockman came on board for approximately 3 years. And Mr. Waterloo was outstanding. Mr. Stockman was absolutely fabulous, followed by Roger Malling. And Mr. Malling was a great mentor to me. And he was here from, I think, basically 7 years from '63 on until 1968 when I arrived as a freshman teacher right out of Eastern Illinois University. And so from that time, we spent from 1968 to basically 1999 in the program. As we were growing, we started basically, I started in '68, I think approximately about 75, 80 students. We grew to a high point of about 285 in the late 70s, early 80s, going into the 90s, and just had so many wonderful experiences. Chicago Bear games, we did 2 of those. We played for the St. Louis Football Cardinals. Countless parades in the area and competitions out there. We played for the Aloha Bowl, which was good when we played for the Peach Bowl, the Orange Bowl, Sugar Bowl. A couple others, presidential inaugural parades. I played for Mr. Reagan while he was in the area. I played for Mr. Bush. Played in the 1972 inaugural parade, which was so much fun because all these experiences were, not only were we playing for those, but we were experiencing the culture outside of our community. And the really neatest thing of all that came from all of this was the fact that we as a community, we as a musical family, we as a county came together and said, oh my, what has he done now? And we joined together, and as the pride and joy grew, our community took pride in our organizations. My pride and my success was not because of me. It was because of the community, it was because of parents, it was because of kids, and we do still refer to all those kids as our children. And I think there were approximately about 4,972 kids that went through the program. We've tried, Mrs. Sperry has tried to keep track. And out of that, we had 97 sets of kids who were married, that were husband and wife, that were in band together. And one of the things that was really neat was the fact I had kids in Eastern's band. I had 14 in the Marching Illini at one time. We were taking 18 to maybe 20 kids to IMEA every year. And we've had kids play abroad. And it's just been wonderful. And one of the neat things was we had the FFA band. That was kids that were made up, that were in agriculture, but also musicians. So it was fun, but it was also musically formed up in a professional way. That high school band, we were considered the musical ambassadors for our community. For me, it was family. I mean, those kids, they are still our kids. We hollered a lot, we screamed a lot, we worked hard, and we learned work ethic, and I think that is very, very important. And we also cried a lot. We've lost kids, and I don't give them up very easy. Okay, and so those kids were always, the thing about it is they were here then, They are here now, and when they're gone, they will still be with us. And those kids were the joy of my life. They brought things to my wife and I that we didn't even anticipate or expect. And I'm so proud of them because they have went on to do better socially, professionally. And and our group was kind of unusual. We accepted everyone. You didn't have to be had to be made like a cookie cutter. We had those who were out in the left field, those who were out in the right field, those who had different color hair, different thoughts and aspirations, and they were still our kids. They are still part of us. I hope that someday I will be a memory that will be good for them because their memories of them have been wonderful for us.
I'm going to tell a story about my dad. He was born in 1956. His name is Steve Comstock. He loves children and he's a man with a big heart. He was born and raised in Paris and spent most of his life here. He's been a Mason since 2000 and a Shriner since 2002. He loves children. He is a clown in the parades and he loves to give out toys and candy to the kids. One time he actually ran out of Hot Wheels that he gives to the little boys in the parades, and he got a dollar out of his pocket and gave it to a little boy because he didn't have any Hot Wheels left, and he knew that little boy was just waiting for a Hot Wheels. And just the look in his eyes made my dad happy. My brother was born with clubbed feet, and the Shriner Hospital put casts on his legs and turned his legs completely around. And that's one of the main reasons why my dad is a Mason and a Shriner. That has a lot to do with his whole life. The kids will actually stand waiting for my dad to come down the street because he will shove his coat full of Hot Wheels and he'll shove it full of little crowns for the girls, and they actually stand out there and wait, and he just doesn't like to pass up any kid. He likes to hand them out to as many as he can, so he always runs out halfway through the parade and he'll give out money, change, whatever he has. He's just has the biggest heart of any man I know. And he wants to bring back the old days where he remembers going to see Santa Claus and getting an orange and an apple and a candy cane and some candy, and the true meaning of Christmas. He really brings that back when he plays Santa Claus. He's just really pretty much my hero.
I feel like that this card that I received after Mandy passed really summed up Mandy's life, and I wanted to share that with everyone. The life of any person finds its true meaning in every opportunity to give, to inspire, and to make living more beautiful for another. On the inside it said, "Let us celebrate the life of one who truly knew how to inspire the best in each of us." Mandy meant so much to this community, and I really believe that that showed her life, and what she would want everyone to gain from her story was that we are here to help others and inspire as we can. My story begins actually in 2006. My baby sister, Amanda Pate Pheasant, actually known as Mandy by most people, was approached by a government agency here in Paris to help the Toys for Tots program because it was nearly non-existent at that point. And they asked her, because she already had a ministry, that to maybe help the Marine to continue the work and kind of take off, some of the slack. And so Mandy began Christmas for Kids. By 2007, we had taken over the job of providing Christmas for the underprivileged kids of Edgar County. We live here in Paris. Mandy was born and raised in Paris, and very much a community girl. And the neat thing was Mandy was At the age of 13, started her own ministry. She was a singer with very much mission-minded. She did missions with Hurricane Katrina. She went out to Indian reservations in Arizona. But Paris, being her hometown, was the most important to her. We started doing Christmas for underprivileged kids, and we kind of wanted to take the Toys for Tots program and go a little bit further. We wanted to provide kids a smile at Christmas, you know, something that they wanted, but we also wanted to provide some of their needs. We wanted to provide clothing, maybe some educational needs. In 2006, we did approximately maybe around 60 children, and by 2007 it had grown to a little over 100. Kind of what makes this bittersweet is that 2010, Mandy was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was diagnosed in June of 2010, fought a battle that ended in April of 2011. It was a very short battle. During that time, she was as involved as she could with the Christmas for Kids program, and one of her last dying wishes was that we would continue the Christmas for Kids program. It was very important to her. Last year, we provided Christmas for almost 670 children, and that is countywide. If Mandy were here, and I know she is in spirit, and I have many times when we've worked with Christmas for Kids, I think, I wonder what Mandy thinks about this. I wonder what she thinks when she sees the wonderful things that's happening. I think she would say, well done, Paris. She loved her community. She knew that Paris had giving hearts, and she is just, I would be just beaming with the joy to see where this program has gone, because it has grown even considerably after she passed in 2011, and I'm just thrilled to know that her memory lives on, but also her wishes and her dream. And that's one thing that Mandy was really big about, was wanting a child to be able to fulfill a dream for a child, and she felt that if on Christmas a child could have a small dream achieved, that they would then feel they could look forward to bigger dreams.
I wanted to tell a story about Velsico because of its importance to the Marshall community. Velsico was actually provided a lot of things for the Marshall community that we wouldn't have had otherwise. In 1931, two cousins, one by the name of Hyman and one by the name of Regenstein, developed a company called Varnall. Hyman had worked on two patents which involved hydrocarbons, and he believed they had, there was a market for those two hydrocarbons. So Regenstein did finance the Varnall company, and it did start in 1931. It wasn't too long after that that Regenstein named the company Velsico. That was derived from the Latin words meaning quick drying oil. It wasn't too long after that that Regenstein realized he wanted to build a manufacturing plant, processing plant, somewhere in central Illinois. He looked at Marshall because of the Pennsylvania Railroad that ran through Marshall, as well as the good roads which ran west and south. Probably more important was the fact that he was close to the oil fields in Crawford County and the refinery in Robinson, because Velsico was an oil-based derivative company. The people in Marshall at that time, the business people, were really enthused that he would even think about selecting Marshall. Founding fathers at that time purchased approximately 270 acres just north of Route 40 and west of Route 1. Manufacturing began on the plant in Marshall in 1935, and by 1936, they were producing their product. Velsico was most noted for Chloridane. It was the first synthetic chlorinated hydrocarbon insecticide to be invented and produced commercially in the United States. The plant expanded its Chloridane operations in 1965 and 1975 due to the market demand. My dad retired from Velsico after 32 years. Velsico afforded my sister, my brother, and I the opportunity to graduate from college and to graduate debt-free with no loans. So for many people, the smell of Chloridane in Marshall, kind of a strong smell which can irritate your nostrils, but those families whose parents might have been employed there, it was a smell that afforded us many opportunities that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So Velsico is pretty much forever etched in not only my family's memory, but the families of many other families in Marshall. That Velsico was a huge thing for Marshall. And I think the men and women who worked there at that time knew how huge it was. And I'd like the younger people who didn't know Velsico or didn't see Velsico as it stood in that day would know that some of the things they enjoy today here in Marshall have occurred because of the 600 people who worked there, where the money stayed and was spent and expanded businesses here in the Marshall area. There's some mornings I actually go outside, and I can say 25 years ago, if everything was just right, I could pick up the scent of Chloridane, because I knew that scent well. Here in the last, 10 years, some mornings I've gone out when the air is just right, and I try to pick up that scent, but it's not there. Sometimes I wish it was.
The story I came to tell today was about Johnny G. Snedeker. His nickname was, depending on who you talk to, the suppliers in Terre Haute called him Quitting Time John because he always showed up right at quitting time. A lot of people that worked for him called him Johnny Go because his initials were that. His family and everyone that loved him called him JG. And that's whose story I'm here to tell today. The name of my talk was There Were Always Motorcycles. And the reason I named that is because from the time I can remember, there were always motorcycles. My dad rode a 61 Harley Davidson 61 cubic inch Harley Davidson to LaPorte, Indiana, with my mother on the back, pregnant with me, and Mom told the story of holding a lamp on her knee all the way to LaPorte. When World War II started, Dad went in the Navy. He was a carpenter's mate. He had learned the carpenter trade because he had to drop out of school when he was 15. My grandfather lost the family farm, the homestead farm, for a $300 debt in 1929 because he had his chest crushed in an accident. The horses got him up against the barn, and he couldn't work. And 1929 was not a good year to not be able to work. So Dad had to contribute to the family. So he dropped out and went to work for Wilbur Moore. Now Wilbur Moore was a craftsman, a house builder par excellence. And in that era, house builder built the entire house. They built the windows, they plumbed the house, they wired the house, they put up the stonework. They did everything. Dad borrowed $5,000 to build the first house, sold my mom's Buick, bought a pickup truck and a motorcycle. And he had a motorcycle. We didn't have a car until I was 14 or 15. but we always had a motorcycle and a pickup truck. Dad loved motorcycles. He loved riding them, racing them, working on them. He was a motorcycle aficionado, and he was a craftsman. We moved. Dad built another house, a bigger one, sold the one we were living in, and we moved to the next house. I grew up with 2x4s and rock lath as our constant companion. One night I remember distinctly as Dad, after we finished dinner, he said, "Pick up the chair you're sitting on, we're moving." We moved to the next house. So we did that down the block until my summer between the 7th and 8th grade. Then we moved to the country. So during this time, we lived on the farm. Dad was building houses, and he built first the American Legion, then he built the Lutheran Church. In later years, he built the nursing home. He built the bank building. There's an office building over there, the fire station. Dad used to have some sayings that he would say. If it was a pretty day, he would say, "This is the day the Lord has made." Let us rejoice and be glad in it. If we were away from home, out of state, we came back and he'd roll across the state line. He'd say, "Good old Illinois." And he was serious about it. He had lived in California, and the Navy sent him to Boston and Connecticut. They sailed around the South Pacific. But when it came time to start his life, he came home.
In 1948, Bob and Betty Errol bought the drugstore from L.G. Engel, and there'd been a drugstore on that corner since 1886. After they had the store for a while, they decided to put in a soda fountain and serve sundaes, ice cream, and also coffee. Well, the coffee turned out to be a big hit, and they had a lot of people coming in regularly in the morning, afternoon, sometimes several times a day to drink coffee. So after a while, Bob thought it'd be neat to put their names on the cup. And he got that idea from barber shops, who in those days, men would come in for a shave and they'd have their own shaving mug, and they'd have it up on the shelf with their name on it. So Bob did that with the coffee cups. Started out with 8 members, and then it gradually grew and it grew, and the industrial arts class at the high school made a rack to hold the cups. And there ended up being 162 cups in this rack. To get in the club, you had to drink 100 cups of coffee or 5 gallons. And once those 162 spaces were taken, you had to wait till somebody died or moved away from town in order to get your cup up there. Some of the cups were unique. Some had symbols on them rather than just names. And Bob Errol, there were a lot of Bobs, so you had to have some way to tell them apart. And Bob Errol had his cup, and when he retired, a local artist painted a rocking chair on the back of his cup. So that was how we identified his. There was another Bob that had a hammer on his. He was a contractor. Another Bob had an axe on his. He was cut down trees. We also had a purple flag that we hung out in front of the pharmacy with a coffee cup on it. When that flag was out there, people knew that coffee was free. Every Monday morning, the bank would buy coffee from 8 to 8:30. Every Wednesday, we had a drawing of some of the regular members, and whoever won got to buy coffee from 8 to 8:30 on Thursday. The coffee club really started getting recognition about 1952 when they had articles in the Decatur paper and the Champaign paper about it. And the one in the Champaign paper was picked up by the AP and went all over the country and all over the world. But it really hit it big in 1977 when Charles Kuralt came to town. He came for the Broomcorn Festival, which the featured attraction was Olds Gold 40-horse hitch. which was a wagon hooked up, 40 horses hooked up to one wagon. He usually spent 2 or 3 days in a town when he traveled, and while he was here, he came in the drugstore and saw the coffee cups, and he said, "I'll be back." And in November of that year, he came back and did a story on the coffee club, which ran on the CBS Evening News. And that started a long friendship between Bob Arrow and Charles Kuralt. In 1988, the CBS ran a special, Back on the Road with Charles Kuralt. And one of the stories they did was on the coffee club. And they interviewed Kuralt, and they said, "Can you pick a favorite show out of all of them that you've done?" And he said, "No, can't really pick one, but," he said, "there's 3 that stick in my mind all the time, and one of them was the coffee club." In 1998, we decided to close. So when we finally did sell the building, I talked to the Chamber of Commerce, and we literally picked up the back bar of the fountain and moved it over to the depot. So the coffee pot's off, but I think the spirit and memories of the coffee club will live on.
Around 1980, my dad, Pat Monahan, and a good friend of his, John Candyman O'Halloran, were watching the Broomcorn Festival parade. And so they're watching the parade and they say, "Boy, it's just as easy to be in the parade as it is to watch it." So that year, the guy who played the Lone Ranger on TV, Clayton Moore, was the Grand Marshal of the parade. So given their very limited resources and abilities, they decided to come up with, instead of the Lone Ranger, the Lawn Rangers. And they pushed decorated mowers, and for Arcola's history in brooms, they carried brooms, and they dressed as the Lone Ranger, and the next year they marched in the parade, did little tricks. They had a small group of them to start. It looks like it's pretty difficult physically and certainly mentally. Show up is the main way to be able to march with the Rangers, is to show up for a parade. And then, of course, we'll get you the right equipment. We've had some people march from various countries off the top of my head. We've had Australia, we've had England, we've had China even, and we've had from all over. So Belgium, we've had some Belgian marchers. So I think the main thing is everyone appreciates a good time. And it is hard to explain. As someone tells you, you gotta see this, and once they get there and they march, then it's rare for a ranger to ever march in one parade, because once you do it once, you get addicted to it and you enjoy it and you want to come back. Initially, for the Broomcorn Festival, of course, it was just that we were showing up. But initially, they were asking, "Hey, can we be in your parade?" And eventually it became where we're getting invited. We're still to this day getting invited to numerous parades every year. And even in some cases being compensated for coming to march in a parade. We had done the St. Patrick's Day parade in Chicago for many years, and at one time, State Senator at that point, Obama, had come by our group because he was also in the parade, and he posed for a picture with us. So, and he's even holding the plunger, which our leader does to give us the signals of what our moves are. So he's holding the plunger, he's with the Rangers, and probably the highlight of his life was just being able to hang out with us for a little bit. Once he got elected, we were, submitting a nomination or an application to be in that parade. But we put in there, we enclosed the picture and said, "Oh, he's a big fan of ours and a friend of ours." And that might have been stretching the truth a little bit, but who's going to interrupt the president-elect to see if he knows these guys from Arcola? I remember they put us with the group of people that we're going to be marching near. And there was a guy there, and he says, "Well, what do you guys do?" And so we're explaining, "Oh, we got these mowers, and it's for Clayton Moore, the Lone Ranger, and we do these tricks with the brooms." And so we sit there telling him, we say, what do you do? And it was Buzz Aldrin. But some of it, we always do St. Patty's Day in St. Louis. We did St. Patrick's Day in Chicago. We've done the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, which we still go back to every other year. The Fiesta Bowl in Phoenix. We've done the College Football Hall of Fame parade in South Bend, Indiana. We've done the NFL Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. So we've already been in 2 Hall of Fames. We were the only team to play in 2 bowl games one year when we did the Holiday Bowl and Fiesta Bowl. And of course, the Broomcorn Festival is, to us, the best parade. And the main part of why we're able to do it again over and over is that the fans love it. The people that go to parades, you know, like I said, you see the same thing over and over, and then who are these guys dressed, you know, their cowboy hats and their kind of pseudo uniforms and these funny looking mowers, and they're doing these tricks. So people love it, and you can see from all the awards we've won that they must be desperate for entertainment. We've had, you know, over 1,000 people march with us, so 1,000 Lawn Rangers, and we've marched in 40 years about 250 parades. And so that in itself is a pretty impressive accomplishment from the original group of 13 Lawn Rangers that decided, hey, we should be in our hometown parade. To go like that is just amazing.
We flew in from London, England, just for broomcorn this year. I live in London. This is awesome.
The Moultrie Douglas County Fair has been an institution and a real part of the fabric in Arthur, Illinois for almost 90 years. The first fair was held in 1924. It was in early October. And we like to refer now to the fair as Arthur's Original Street Festival. Arthur's become somewhat noted for Cheese Festival and several other barbecue festival and other events that we've got. And the reason we say that is the first fair for the first 25 years or so was held uptown on the grade school grounds. A lot of people today don't remember that, and it was held there until 1950 or 51. They set up tents around the street, around the grade school grounds. People had livestock for neighbors for about a week there in the streets in front of their houses. My dad still tells stories about sleeping on Carter Odom's front porch, and that way they were close to the tent where his pigs were at. They set up a stage there on the grounds, and that was the beginning of what's become an institution, in that the Moultrie Douglas County Fair has become noted for great entertainment. And those free acts started at that very early fair in 1924. The fair stayed downtown there at the school grounds until 1950, 51. That's when the first addition to the grade school was built. It was at that point in time that some families got together, donated some ground south of the high school and what is now known as Juergens Memorial Park. And the fair took up residence there and has been there ever since. Johnny shows up with the Tennessee Three and the Statler brothers and the Carter family and his wife June Carter Cash, and just put on two great shows. And what I remember is that all the roads leading into Arthur, from the Arthur Atwood Road, the county road south of town, 133 to Arcola and Lovington, were lined on both sides with vehicles. The night of the fair, after that performance, tried to walk through the midway. You couldn't. There were people hanging upside down out of trees and everywhere else. I've never seen, and no one in town's ever seen that many people. Estimated attendance was between 15 and 20,000 that one day of the fair. The Moultrie Douglas County Fair has been kind of a leader in several different activities. Our tractor pull is annually one of the really good ones in central Illinois, and many people don't realize that the pulling sleds that the tractors hooked up to and dragged down the track, that was invented by a guy here from Arthur named Billy Watkins. Our first Queen contest was in 1962 and continues to be an important part of the program here at the Moultrie Douglas County Fair. We think that we had the first junior-only livestock show in the state here in 1941. My dad, he participated in the late 40s with his 4-H FFA projects. My grandsons are currently participating at the Moultrie Douglas County Fair. We got to see them a year ago, and they represent the sixth generation of my family that have participated in purebred livestock. And so that's been a really important part of the fair for me. The community has supported the fair for this is going to be the 87th version of the Moultrie Douglas County Fair. It's been a big part of the fabric of this community, and we're just proud to have served in some small part and be able to to tell some stories about the fair that we remember and are dear to us and lots of folks just like me. Well, my wife, Mary Beth, is the fourth generation on this farm. Her great-grandfather, Frank McDonald, left Virginia with his brother, and they rode a horse and led a horse all the way out from Virginia here to Illinois. And they settled here in 1859. So when you come to the Great Pumpkin Patch, you really are coming to old McDonald's farm. Our Mac, who manages the farm, is a fifth generation, and his kids and our other son's children, 8 grandchildren, are the sixth generation on this farm. So the roots run deep. They were born, our twin boys, who joined their older brother, Kit, were born on October 26, 1976. And the next spring, Mary Beth wanted them to have their own pumpkins to carve on their first birthday. So that's how it started. The boys, just little, they were barely crawling in the spring, but helped plant the pumpkins in the garden. Every year they would plant pumpkins for their fall harvest. Starting the second year, they had more than what we could use. So they put them out in front of the milk house where the windmill is, and we hung an envelope on the door up by the house, and people bought them on their honor system. And that year we had enough money to pay for the seed for the next year. So when they got into preschool, they would bring their classmates out for a field trip to the farm, and we were a working farm, corn, soybeans, and alfalfa, see the machinery, get up in the tractors, all that kind of stuff. So that just became part of the yearly routine. And then in 1988, we had a drought year. I'm a corn and soybean farmer. It was hard, the 80s were hard on farming, and we were wondering whether we could keep doing this. We weren't really making any money. And so we had the idea, well, why not open up the farm in the fall to the public? We're already raising these pumpkins. The boys are selling them. They're making, $200 or $300. And for a 6th grader or a 7th grader, that's pretty good money. So we decided to open it up to the public. So in 1989, we opened it up. And that first weekend, there were people parked everywhere. And people were in the buildings, even in the house. They were everywhere. Mary Beth and I were sitting out and looking at this, and she says, we've created a monster. And we still have that monster. Well, since day one, the boys have been part of this project, and we've let their creative juices flow, and I think they've really appreciated that. But all great ideas around here, a lot of them come from our sons. Mac is kind of the manager. I remember when he and his brothers got in the bus to go off to school when he was about 12 years old, and before he got in the bus, he handed me a list of things to do. And they got on the bus, and I turned to Mary Beth and I said, look at this, we've got a manager on our hands. He's giving me a list of things to do. So it's been a family effort, and it's been a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, but we hardly feel like we're going to work every day. It's never felt that way.
I'm Darrell Best. They call me Brother Darrell. I'm with the Best Wedding Chapel in Shelbyville, Illinois. The wedding chapel was established to help those that wish to be married. We try to keep it simple. Our slogan is, love is our religion. It's a great honor to be considered to be anybody's wedding officiant, and it's a fantastic day in everybody's lives, and we're honored to be a part of it. Ever since I got married in 1984, I've felt a calling to help those that want to get married. And then some things happened in my life which kind of led me, and I did become ordained with the purpose of doing that, but still keeping my day job, where I was a banker. For 20 years, I was a banker, until I found a beautiful old fire truck sitting alongside the road with a for sale sign in it. And that old truck, I fell in love with it and was thinking, that could be my mobile ministry. We'll call that Red Hot Weddings. And that truck led me to Shelbyville, where I found the church building that we now occupy and call home. And we're very proud of our building there at the Best Wedding Chapel. We've been there since the year 2000. The building was the Catholic Church here in the community. Wonderful building that goes back to the 1870s. Aside from services inside the sanctuary, we have the world's fastest wedding chapel, of which I'm the driver. We know it's the fastest wedding chapel in the world because a crew came over from England. It was Guinness World Record. They timed our truck and have proved it to be the world's fastest wedding chapel. Some people just want to minister, and that being the case, we have our own personal vehicles that we use. We have a couple black and white retired police cars. We call them our Love Squad cars. In our travels with all the publicity we got, we were very honored to be contacted by a famous international fashion designer from New York City named Betsy Johnson, who invited us to come out to New York City and spend time with her and be involved in a fashion shoot with her. And that was just such a wonderful event in my life, and it was such a thrilling thing to do, driving a 1942 truck from Shelbyville, Illinois to New York City and back. So now it's even more roadworthy than it was when we got it from My Truck. They did it right. They really did a fantastic job on the truck, and they got to realize the new engine in it, yep, new transmission, new wiring, and they gave it a new lease on life. Shelbyville is now a wedding destination, and we're very proud of the fact that we had a whole lot to do with that, and because of that, we are thankful. We're thankful for the building that we have. We're thankful for the other businesses that come into play and have been created because of the wedding industry here in Shelbyville. We're very proud and honored that we can be a part of that. Peace and love from Shelbyville, Illinois to you all.
This is about Josephine. She was born in 1839 in Ohio. And she moved to Valparaiso, Indiana with her parents when she was just a little girl. And that's where she lived most of her youth. And then her mother passed away, and her dad was an engineer in Chicago. After her mother passed away, she traveled with her father, and that's how she learned about motors. And then she was going to a private school in Indiana. The school burned, and she moved to Shelby County over at Windsor, Illinois, to visit her sister, and that's where she met her future husband. William Cochran was born in Cochran's Grove, and he started the first full-time newspaper, and he and his uncle went into the dry goods business. Josephine married William when she was 19 years old, and they bought a big house at 148 South Broadway, which is still standing. They did entertain so much, but she was quite a sophisticated lady. She had maidservants because the house was so large. But when they washed the dishes after the big parties, they would chip and break the dishes. And finally she said, "They're too hard to replace. I will do the dishes myself." So they just left them, and she hated washing dishes. So one day she was in there washing dishes, and she said, "Someone ought to invent something that would do these dishes." And she said, "Why don't I?" So that's when she put her knowledge of motors, and she had a young man by the name of George Butters to help her put the parts together because he had the strength to do that. So she took a copper boiler, and she made all of the little cups and saucers and plates and everything into wire baskets. And she had a pump so she would get the water in there, and it's soapy water, and wash them that way. But she didn't understand for a while how to get the rinse water in. So she just took a tea kettle, heated the water, and poured it over the dishes and let them air dry. And so that's how she got started with washing the dishes. People in town here said, "Oh, you ought to enter those in a show because it's so valuable to have a dishwasher." She was ready to put her dishwashers into the competition. that women were to enter their stuff into a separate building from the men's stuff. But she didn't know that. All she did was put Garris Cochran Machines, or J.G. Cochran. And they didn't know it was a woman until they handed her the award for the best invention of the old shooting capoodle, as we used to say. When they handed her that, then they said they couldn't take it away. They'd already given her the highest award. And she moved up there to Chicago, and she bought an old schoolhouse and converted it into a business. She traveled to the fairs and to the big things that was going on in all the states and sold those dishwashers. And she traveled to all those hotels that had been rebuilt, because when they were rebuilt, they had water and electricity then, and that's just what she needed. After she passed away, then her invention was sold several times, and it wound up with Hobart Manufacturing Company in Indiana, and it's now under the name of KitchenAid.
Big things in a small town in Casey, it just kind of happened. It just happened that one of our family vacations out in Denver, Colorado, we rode a little train up to Silver Plume, and my wife's aunt, Gail Green, she asked Diane to go by in this tea shop in Silver Plume, Colorado, and just look around and see what she thought, because her friend ran it. And we'd done that, and my kids and my wife went away from there saying, man, this is something we need for our town. So I said, if we're going to do this, I want to do it, but I don't want to start another food business downtown and just try to compete for the same folks that's in the town. If we're going to do this, we're going to think outside the box. We're going to try to get new customers here to our store and help our neighboring businesses to expand their businesses also. So, and then that's where the wind chime come in. My grandmother had wind chimes when I was a kid, and every time I hear a wind chime, I think of her. It just gives me just an awesome, cozy feeling, you know, about how smells and sounds just do that. But one evening, I was listening to my wind chimes at home, and I thought, I wonder what the world's largest wind chime is. So I looked it up, and being a pipeline company and wind chimes are pipe, I thought, what the heck, it would be an easy do. So we checked into the Guinness book and found out the pathway we had to go for that, and we started in roughly probably late 2009, and around 2011 we completed the wind chime. In June of 2012 we opened up the tea shop beside it. It's called the Whittling Whimsy, double W, and it's a whimsical place, and it was named after my grandmother, Letha Whittling. So, and that was supposed to be the end of the story. But as things progressed, the family decided to do another project, and we decided to do the world's largest golf tee. As we was building that, my wife's cousin, Jeanette Husengay, has a yarn studio at the corner, and I like to chainsaw carve, and so I set out and done, while we was doing the golf tee, I'd done 2 more Guinness Book records. It would be a world's largest crochet hook and the world's largest knitting needles, and donated them to Jeanette. So we had 4 world's largest, and that's when I really seen that this is something that's really going to stick. After we completed the golf tee and got it up, we kicked in 4 more. We'd end up doing the world's largest pair of wooden shoes, world's largest mailbox, the world's largest rocking chair, and then we got the world's largest pitchfork. That gives us 8 now, and we have some future ones coming out. How we got the name Big Things in a Small Town is kind of neat, because we was all at our office sitting around, and they said, what are you going to do when somebody beats the wind chime? And we sitting around, and I said, well, it'll still be a big thing in a small town. So that's where we dubbed that. If I didn't have a day job that I had to be at work every day, I would just love to walk around and visit with the tourists, because what's really cool is, you know, you just kind of blend in with them, and you act like you don't have anything to do with this, and just listen to what they say and how they talk, and it's just uplifting. Say on any given day now, when the sun's out and it's a nice day, you can expect anywhere from, I'd say, 150 to 300 people in a day, and during the summer tourism stuff, and it's just really exciting when you see all the parking lots at downtown that's filled. You know, they're full, and people's driving around trying to find a place to park. It's an awesome feeling.
It was actually Dad's construction business that brought me to Casey on September 11th, 2001. I was a fledgling graphic designer, and he had asked me if I would help him put together a new brochure for Dan R. Smith Building Services, and I was happy to do that. So we were going to meet at 8 o'clock that morning and go out and take pictures of some of the homes that he had built in and around Casey. When I arrived there at about 8 o'clock, almost straight up, which was unusual for me, I was on time. Dad didn't answer the door, and when I walked in, I found him glued to the television, which was really unusual for him during the day. And my father, he was white as a sheet, and he looked at me and said, "Do you know what's happening?" And at that time I didn't know that about 15 minutes before I had arrived, an airliner had struck the South Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. So I sat down next to him, and I hadn't been sitting to him maybe a minute when we watched in horror as the second airliner struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. So for the next couple of hours, my father and I sat mostly in silence with tears, watching the events of September 11th unfold, and I will never forget that moment. It was kind of a bonding experience for my dad and I. It really impacted my father in a big way. And my dad is very patriotic. He loves this country, he loves his community, he loves people. And he's also an idea man. My dad, anyone who knows him knows that he's famous for saying, you know, a guy could, ... But he decided he didn't want people to forget. First of all, he didn't want people to forget what happened, the tragedy. He wanted people to remember the lives that were lost on the day of the attacks. But he also wanted to find a way that he could share his faith and encourage people to turn to God for answers, for healing, for a move toward peace. He came up with the idea of making, at the time it was 3,008 white crosses that were about a foot tall, out of wood, one for each victim that was lost in the various attacks on September 11th, and constructing a memorial on the hillside just outside of his workshop facing Washington Street Road. So when you come down Washington Street Road, you always see the hill. It was a perfect place to put a memorial. And he roped his two brothers, Clinton and Randy, in to help him with that, and other small group of family and friends. Constructed all these crosses and painted them, and that first year put them in kind of a small square pattern in the middle of the hill. But subsequent years, he decided every year, you know, I'm doing it again, I'm doing it again. I don't think he really saw that far in the future, that how long he would feel like doing this, but for the last 16 years, he's put that memorial out. It's evolved through the years. In 2012, with the Benghazi attacks, he decided to add four crosses for those victims. And one of the most powerful things about the monument, I think, is viewing it at night. When you look at the monument or the memorial at night, it's breathtaking because he's got it lit up and those white crosses just glow. And it's so still at night. And so my tradition has been to go down on the evening of September 11th and just walk around and remember that day with my dad and remember the attacks. Dad loves the people of Casey, and they've really come alongside him in seeing that memorial was put out. There were some years it was really hard. The ground was hard. It was hard to get him in, and you had to grid the whole hillside before the day before putting him up. So it was a lot of work, backbreaking work, but always worth it. That building support through the years really was important to Dad, and especially became important in 2015. In 2015, in the spring, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And in 2015 through 2017, those 3 years, the memorial would not have happened without the people of Casey coming alongside and helping out. And in fact, this past year, in 2017, we weren't sure we were going to be able to focus on the memorial. My dad had been given very little time, and he was very weak. But there was just something deep inside me that said, we need to do this for Dad. We need to make it happen. And so we did. My dad actually had garnered quite a following on social media because he used to write daily devotionals, talking about his faith, talking about living in Smithville, and he had gotten a lot of friends through that, so it was really easy to just put out the clarion cry on social media and say, hey, we're going to put this memorial up, will you come help? And we had, in the end, this year, over 100 people show up on September 8th to see that that memorial was constructed, and it took about 45 minutes to put 3,000 crosses in the ground. It was remarkable. And Dad was too weak to really help out in any way, but he was able to come up at the very, very end. Family was able to take the pickup truck and go down and put him on the tailgate and drive him up to see everyone. And it was one of the most moving experiences of my life. I don't think there was a dry eye in Smithville that day. And he was just very moved and very thankful that the people of Casey, that it meant enough to them to do that. And I know that they did it not only to remember the victims, but to honor Dad and his place in the community. He's been involved in the community for many years in many different ways, and the love for him really showed that day. 2 weeks to the day, on September 22nd, my father passed away from pancreatic cancer, and he had a beautiful life. He lived in a town that he loved, on land that he loved, with people that he loved, and who could ask for anything more?
Well, the story that I would like to tell is a story about a band. It's a kitchen band. It is a band, I think, with a heart and with a mission, and it is a band with a pretty lengthy past. This band started 33 years ago, so it started in actually a church meeting. There were a few ladies that were involved, and two of them kind of took the bull by the horns and decided that they were going to start this kitchen band. And this is a group of ladies that put all of this effort and this time and this energy into bringing some happiness into the lives of those who are, you know, in nursing homes, Alzheimer's unit, and our goal is to put a smile on their face and put a little bounce in their step. And we've had ladies and gentlemen who I've danced with several, you know, we've had some who like to get up and be part of the band, and you know, we encourage it. We play different instruments because we are a kitchen band, and we have this Doris Young. I went with her to Champaign, and she looked for all these different things that she wanted to put together, a couple of tin pie pans and a block of wood and strings, you know, kind of door hingy strings. Anyway, she calls it a pocacello, and we lovingly call it a pile of junk. But, and then, you know, one girl plays an egg beater, and the other one plays a food mill, Sandy Simpson, and Jan Seed plays a pink flamingo, and it's actually a kitchen chef. It has a little scrubber on top of the flamingo's head, and it has a little apron, just like ours. And she uses it kind of like a drum. She has a red spatula, and so she kind of keeps time. And Sandy Simpson plays what she calls a food mill, and so it's sort of a grinder, and she grinds back and forth. And Mary Beth Opperman has a grater, and she'll grate against, you know, with, I think she uses a spoon. And we wear hats and jackets, and, you know, we have all kinds of, if we're doing things kind of cowboy, we have cowboy hats and scarves. And so we try to make it interesting and stimulating. There is one part of our show that everyone loves, and it is we sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." And you have to decide if you're a Cub fan or a Cardinal fan. And so the residents get such a kick out of that, you know, because I try to coerce some of them into, you know, cubbies, and then that doesn't always work. One time I went up and I was going to root for the cubbies, and the little guy went like that. We have done the State Lions Club Convention in Springfield, and we, you know, have done the Farm Bureau and the Shriners, and we do Sparks in the Park, and we do Apple Dumpling Festival in Atwood. So we get around, actually, you know. And I remember this one little lady on the front row. Afterwards, we always go around and talk to them and say, you know, what'd you think? Did you have a good time? And they'll tell us little stories. And I went around one time, this lady on the front, and I said, did you have a good time? And she said, oh, yes, honey. She said, why, you should take this show on the road. And I said, well, that's a wonderful compliment. And she said, oh, yes, you're way too good to play here.
I graduated college in 1964, and I went to work for the Department of Children and Family Services for the state of Illinois. And right away I saw there wasn't any facilities for acting out teenage boys who had been declared delinquent from the court. So I looked all over this state for a facility, and right there in Tuscola on Main Street, I found that big old Victorian house with 19 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms, and I moved in with 19 delinquents the day after I bought it. And Tuscola was really great to me. They let me take my boys to high school, and they got me a judge to sponsor my academy. So from the day one in 1965, Tuscola was super great to me. I started a little construction company along with the boys' home, and that way I could pay them a little bit of money and everything. So it was after my adopted father died and I went to the lockbox. I was born a half-breed at Florence Critten's Orphans Home in Peoria, Illinois. And I didn't know my heritage until a year after, and the deposit box was opened, and there it had my Native American background. And in 1980, the state of Illinois needed minority contractors, and so I worked real hard, and the second year, I became Minority Contractor of the Year, and Ronald Reagan's secretary called up, and my wife answered the phone there in my house in Tuscola, and he said, this is Gail Hodges, Ronald Reagan's secretary, and you and your husband are invited to the White House, all expenses paid. My wife thought it was one of my buddies playing a joke, and so my wife on the phone to the Reagan secretary, she said, I'd like to have that in writing. 20 minutes later, Western Union telegram came to the door. In writing, we were invited to the White House. Well, the first record I did, I shot 40,000 in straight flying blocks out of the air, and it took 8 days of shooting in a row. And so I shot several thousand blocks every day until I got to 40,060, and I broke Annie Oakley's record there and everything, and they put me on the front cover of Guns magazine, September 1987. And when you get on the front cover of one of those National Slick magazines, then they all want you. Yes, flying targets with a bow and arrow, and I did that right there at 505 South Main Street. And all the local TV shows came and everything, and I shot over 5,000 targets. Other people threw them for me, and I shot them, stuck an arrow in them. There's no doubt about it when you hit them with that. Tuscola sure has been good to me in all the things that I've tried to do. They helped me in all my adventures. So I've lived here since '65, and Tuscola is a good place to live.
You know, you really cannot do a history of Eastern Illinois University or the city of Charleston or the community without doing something on the Livingston Lord Administration Building, also known as the Castle, also known as Old Main. You know, Old Main was the very first building that was ever built on the campus of Eastern Illinois University. And the cornerstone was laid on May 27, 1896. Governor Altgeld came down, who was the governor of Illinois at the time, came down for the ceremony. There were over 15,000 people who were here for the ceremony. Originally, they had $88,000 scheduled to build the building. I think it ended up costing somewhere around $100,000. This was the first building of Bishop's Woods, the 40-acre plot that the state of Illinois purchased. And behind Old Main was a lake. And I'd like to be able to say the name, but I can't pronounce it. So I think it's Lake Altamont. Why a castle? Governor Altgeld at the time really, I think, thought that every university needed a castle. And so there was one on Illinois State's campus, one on Southern's, one on Northern's. And in fact, the one on Northern's campus was very similar to the original design of the way that the Old Main was supposed to be. And I'd often heard the rumor that it was supposed to be a castle on the Rhine because the Governor Altgeld, believed that the European higher education system, especially the German system, was one of the best in the world. And he wanted to have something to remind everyone about the castle on the Rhine. And consequently, I always say, if you take a look at Old Main, you'll see that one turret is taller than the other. And people ask the question, why is that? And the reason is in the castles in Germany, that is where you would put your best archer. The building housed everything. It housed, and it's 6 stories, by the way, and people don't understand that because only 3 stories are currently occupied. But it housed the gymnasium, which the best that we can figure was on the 6th floor, which is currently closed. It had a classroom, or several classrooms. It had the health service, which was a nurse. It had the library, it had the chapel, everything was enclosed in that building. And I remember my first visit coming here, coming down Route 16 and looking into the distance and seeing the castle. And even before I made my first step foot on the campus, I saw that and I said, I think I really want to come here because it is a symbol of the university. It's a great building, the tradition of the university. When you walk in there, it's amazing.
After I graduated from Charleston, I thought I'd go to Eastern. And that was, I was the first year of the baby boomers, so higher education was just booming. I mean, they had more students coming in than they could handle, and Eastern could care less if I came here or not. And I got recruited to Wabash College in Crawfordsville, Indiana, because my best friend was an all-state football player, and he also graduated first in our class. They wanted him, and so they let me tag along thinking maybe they could get him if I came. Well, he went to Dartmouth and I went to Wabash 1 year. And Wabash is an all-boys school, and that is a terrible way to get an education. I mean, there's absolutely no reason to stay awake during class. And so I came back and went to summer school after that and never left Eastern. But student government at Eastern was very important to me because it was a good training period. I think some people think, well, student government's irrelevant. It's not. The year I was student body president, we were able to get the curriculum changed to graduate from Eastern, and students had input for the first time. Big issue back then, this was 1967, and women still had hours at Eastern. Even if you were over 21, if you lived in a dorm, you still had hours. You had to be in it. I think it was 10 o'clock during the week and 12 o'clock on weekends. I had to go deal with the president, President Doudna, who was the president and ran this place with an iron hand. I mean, he made every decision at Eastern back then. There wasn't such a thing as academic democracy back then. But Dowd and I got to be where we could deal. And I remember going in talking about women hours. And of course, he was in his 60s, I think, by then. And very, very proper guy and very traditional. I said, we really think we ought to change this. This is not right. He said, well, Jim, he says, I think we have a responsibility to look out for the weaker sex. And I just kind of looked at him like, oh, that's an interesting philosophy, you know, because I was raised by my mother, so I never thought women were the weaker sex. But we talked, and finally we kind of did a gradual thing. And, 3 years, women hours were done away with. My senior year was 1968. That's the year everything went up for grabs in the United States. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, Martin Luther King was assassinated, the Tet Offensive. Later I had the Democratic Convention, which was chaos. I mean, it was a very volatile time. Eastern, while we had a lot of change, it wasn't volatile. I remember we had and Vietnam, of course, was a big issue around the country. At Eastern, the group that demonstrated against Vietnam, I remember they were protesting out in front of Old Main. And when they came out that night to lower the flag, they all stood at attention. And again, Eastern was, in a lot of ways you would say, was conservative, but it was a very active political campus. Now, I did not graduate with high honors. In fact, I did not graduate with honors. I did graduate though. That was, I was happy about that. My grades weren't bad, but when I was student body president, they were terrible. But I always felt like I got a good education at Eastern, but I think I got just as much of an education from student government, from working at Cavens and Bales, as well as the classroom. There's that combination that was very helpful to me. And most importantly, I met Brenda. So when I left Eastern, I went over to Springfield as a legislative intern. In fact, what was ironic, I remember when I applied for the internship program, one of the professors who was reviewing it at the University of Illinois said, "You've got to be the only person I've ever seen this year who has a recommendation. You're the student body president, but you're being recommended by the president of the university and the dean of students." And I had developed a relationship with Dr. Doudna. He recommended me. We didn't always agree, but we agreed to work in a very constructive manner, and we'd compromise. And I learned the art of compromise dealing with Dr. Doudna. Then later, when I became a state legislator from Charleston, I was very tied to Eastern. I mean, I looked out for Eastern, and I was involved in higher education matters. And as governor, the Board of Higher Education knew that I cared about Eastern. And they would make a priority list of new construction, and there's only so much money. And they'd make a priority list, and maybe they'd have 40 things on the list, but only you're going to fund 10 of them. Well, they knew that I cared about Eastern, so they used to take Eastern's projects and they'd put them down about 20. And because they knew that I would not go out I would always take the Board of Higher Education recommendation, because I didn't want to get, like we used to have, universities over fighting among themselves, and that U of I and Southern would get all the money, because the small schools didn't have the political clout. And that's why that priority list was very important for the Board of Higher Education. But they knew that I would always care about Eastern, so they put Eastern down at 20 on their project, and then I'd have to come up with money to pay all 20 of the projects to get to Eastern. And about the second time they did it, I called in the guy, and he was the guy I'd worked with and knew well, good friend. I said, "You do that one more time, you're out of your job." And Eastern didn't get an unfair share, but they didn't get ignored. But Eastern, because we were small and we really didn't have that much statewide, there was this kind of, hey, he's one of us. And so Eastern's always had a very important part in my life. I just feel very fortunate that I grew up in Charleston. I'm very fortunate my parents made that call back early on. We're going to live in Charleston, where there's a university, and our kids can get an education. And the education, as I said, it wasn't just in the classroom. It's the environment of a university town, where it was small enough you knew everybody, that you didn't get forgotten, and you actually had professors as teachers. It just has been a very important part of my life.
It is a small community, I think 250 people at the very most, and everybody knew everybody else. And it was one of the stagecoach stops when Route 40 went through from coast to coast. But it was just a small town that everybody knew everybody. They had eventually had a nice big park where people had their picnics, reunions and whatever. And we had a lot of entertainers come in from Nashville and places to put on shows there. And they always had a good crowd from miles around would come to the Jewett Park to listen to these people. And one of the bigger stars from Jewett was Denver Darling. He made it big in recording. He went to New York where he became really famous in New York area. He was on TV and radio and recording. His hometown was Jewett, and when he finally decided to retire, he came back to Jewett, and while he was living there, he always had visitors from the film business. Tex Ritter and all the big stars would come to visit with him, you know, to just reminisce and visit because they were old friends. My family has always been musical as far as going at home, Mom and Dad's house, and on Sunday afternoons, you know, and get together and sing or play cards or whatever. It was always a ritual every Sunday that people in Jewett said, afternoon, you couldn't hardly get down the road because cars was parked on both sides blocking you because they were all at Glenn Gentry's house, you know. And then later on in the 40s, the Cumberland County Barn Dance came on, and my dad was more or less in charge of that, but there was about 40 people, like I said, that was in that barn dance. We traveled all over Indiana and the state of Illinois, and we traveled usually in a big farm truck with bales of hay to sit on in the back of it, you know, and with all of our instruments, and we'd sing all the way up there and sing all the way back, you know. It was a big party. Even when we weren't performing, we all enjoyed it. I think because I feel like it was a musical town with Denver Darling and all the other people who came from there. I think that's why everybody was happy there, you know, and the singing made it happy. While I was away from home, I was able to do some shows with some pretty big names, Merle Haggard and Buck Owens and Ray Price, and that was always a thrill too, to know that I got to know those people and talk to them like they were family. It's still the same to me. The old school bell's still there in the park, but it's still town, it's still hometown. It's like one big family.
I'm G. Stanley Albin, and my first initial is Glenn, and that was my dad, and Stanley was my grandpa, so I don't have a name of my own. I was born in Terre Haute, Indiana, so I'm a Hoosier hotshot, not an Illinois sucker. Great-great-grandpa James Madison came from Kentucky and homesteaded there on the family farm. It was in the farm family for 100 years, so it was designated a centennial farm. We still own it today, and it will go to my granddaughters eventually, so it will be in the family a long time. The next step is 150 years that we're looking for. There's an Albin Bridge right next to my house, the Township Bridge, and it has a plaque on it that says Albin Bridge, built in 1922. My dad drove a 16-wheeler for Hayes Freight Lines in Indiana. His right leg was smaller than his left because he had polio at an early age. He went to Warm Springs, Georgia, where President Roosevelt had an institution down there that helped him get out of that. I went the first 3 grades in Mattoon, then I moved to Neoga, and we went to a one-room school from 4th through the 7th grade there. Then it was consolidated into a Pioneer, which had all grades in it, and I was in the 8th grade there. And then I went to Neoga High School, participated in all sports pretty much. I had a pretty good baseball player. I batted 4th. After high school, I went on to U of I. I flunked out of there because I partied too much, and so then they said, take a year off, so I went down to Eastern and finished up down there as a business teacher. And I taught 34 years pretty much in Neoga schools. I taught business classes, bookkeeping, typing, shorthand. I remember in typing class I would beat on a wastebasket to get them to try to get in rhythm on their typing. Anytime I see a student now, I said I should have taught you more. I have a son and a daughter, and they live just across the road from me. Since my family is here, that gives me great pleasure to be close to them. 79 years, there's been quite a few changes. And yoga, there used to be a pool hall on the corner, Pop's Pool Hall, and then there was a drugstore next to that. And Cass Stevens Grocery was the other way down the street. And we used to come in weekly and attend a movie. We used to drive Studebakers, and they had a pointed nose in the middle and a pointed fender on each side. But I no longer have those, but I do have a 76 Corvette Stingray, and I enjoy driving it. Unlike our neighboring town of Toledo, they have 989 happy souls and 11 sore heads, and we don't have any of those in the yoga.
What I like to say is, if you've not come here, you've not experienced the best in entertainment. Right in your own backyard. Founded in 1957, a gentleman named Guy Little Jr. He lived here in town. His family was from here in town. His father was a farmer and his mom was the English teacher at the high school. He decided when he graduated college that he was going to open his own theater. So he looked all around central Illinois, in Decatur, in Charleston, in Champaign, and settled on here because there was a movie theater here called the Grand Movie Theater. And it was closed during the summer, and the gentleman who owned the theater had a drive-in movie theater on the edge of town. So Guy talked to him and set up a deal. And that year, 1957, he did 9 musicals in 9 weeks, which is crazy. So it took off. Guy started bringing in stars off of what we called the straw hat circuit at the time. And that was TV and movie stars from that time period would learn a show. They'd learn a role in a show. And so if they learned Dolly Levi and Hello Dolly, they would come to different theaters across the United States, knowing their lines, having costumes, all in a trunk. They would travel and they'd come here, get here on Sunday night. On Monday, they'd have rehearsal with the cast who had already been rehearsing, and Tuesday, the same thing. They'd open on Wednesday and run it through Sunday, and then they'd go to the next place. That put Sullivan on the map. It was, this little Midwestern town, and then all of a sudden, you're able to go to the grocery store or to any of the restaurants in town and see these stars from TV. It was a big deal. We didn't have the tabloids and the internet and all those things at that time, so people were flocking to Sullivan so that they could meet their favorite stars. And over the years, we had over 300 stars come through here. We changed, so we're not bringing the stars in now that are known. We're bringing what we call future stars in. So people who have started in the business, graduated with a degree in musical theater from somewhere, and have started working professionally around the country. Some people have worked here, have been on Broadway, have done national tours, a lot of them, but we are giving them, a lot of them, their first big break in professional musical theater. A young lady who has now made huge hits in Broadway and also on the West End in London, Marisha Wallace. One of her first professional jobs was here. She did many shows here for us. And the most recent thing that she's done is she was Effie White, the lead in Dreamgirls in London, and now she's in Waitress in London and is getting ready to do Hairspray. When she was on the Tony Awards performing for the first time, I was watching, and of course I'm a sobbing mess, watching her, this good friend of mine, perform on the Tony Awards. She was with the company of Aladdin performing. And I called to leave her a message and thought, I'm going to congratulate her. It's not a minute after she's walked off stage. And she picks up the phone. And I go, what are you doing? She goes, what are you doing? And I said, I'm calling to congratulate you. She said, I saw that you called and I had to answer. So those are the relationships still that we're able to have with these people. It's amazing that this little community has this amazing thing for 63 years now. We have an 11,000 square foot production studio that we're able to build all of our sets right here. We have 250,000 plus costumes that we have here, and everything else is built right here on site. There's not a bad seat in the house. I've sat in every one of these seats over the years, just checking things out. Millions of people have seen shows here. And that's just amazing to me that we play to almost 50,000 people a year. They get to feel like they're a part of the show because we're not any bigger than that. We have a little over 100 kids in our dance and drama program. We teach 23 classes every week during the school year, and then in the summer we do a summer camp called Broadway Boot Camp, which kind of gives them a roundabout experience of getting to sing, getting to act, getting to dance, and just performing for their audience or for their families to come in. And it's so fun to watch those kids be able to build confidence, build friendships with each other. They feel like they are a star here, and that's so important to me, to let them feel like they have their community, their place here. And I mean, when you look around and see this beautiful facility in Sullivan, Illinois, it's just amazing that it's here, and that is 100% thanks to donations that have come in from our patrons and from businesses throughout the area. A town of 4,400 people, you drive anywhere in or out of town, that's all you see is cornfields all the way to Decatur, all the way to Mattoon and Charleston, all the way to Effingham. And you get here and here's this like shining beacon with the lights of Broadway right here in our own little town. So we truly are Broadway in the cornfields.
In 1960, here in Sullivan, they had a Buffalo barbecue event in honor of then Vice President Richard Nixon, who was running for presidency against Kennedy in the 1960 election. And my Boy Scout troop, I think it's Pac 39 here in Sullivan, I was a member of. And it was our Boy Scout troop that was selected to be security, believe it or not, around Nixon's picnic table. I was stationed right behind Vice President Nixon and his wife Pat. They brought him and presented him with a buffalo barbecue sandwich on a tiny paper plate and a soda. He took, I think, 3 or 4 bites out of it and made some very nice compliments about how tasty it was, and thank you very much, and excused himself. And when he got up to leave, he left that half-eaten sandwich on the picnic table, on the paper plate, and everybody else went to follow him, and my duty was over, so I picked up the plate and the sandwich, hopped on my bicycle and rode home and told my mother. I said, Mom, I've got Vice President Nixon's sandwich that he didn't finish. She said, what do you want me to do with it? I said, freeze it. So she put it in a plastic baggie and put the baggie inside of a Musselman's applesauce glass jar, stuck it in the freezer, and that was a Friday. By Monday, my mother was working at the courthouse and mentioned that to one of the other courthouse workers, and a reporter heard that, came out to our house, and wrote a short story for the Moultrie County News at that time, and took my picture with the sandwich and the plate. Fast forward to 1988, there was a lady working for Mattoon or Decatur paper named Vicki Shaw. And Vicki was purging files in 1988 because that was also an election year. And she ran across that original article and she thought, wouldn't it be fun just to reminisce? And so she called me, she tracked me down. I was in Springfield at the time and wanted to redo the story. She came over to Springfield, redid the whole thing, only there's a second half to that story. After she wrote it, it hit the wire services, UPI, AP, till finally I had a phone call after work one day on my answering machine at home, and she introduced herself as being with The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. Call this number. I said, yes. It's a joke. And I did not call back, so she called again. I thought, well, maybe I better return her call. So I did, and it was on the up and up. They wanted to know, would I be interested in flying out to Hollywood, bring that frozen sandwich with me, and would I like to be a guest on The Tonight Show? I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I took my glass jar with the barbecue sandwich in it and set it down on his desk, and then he interviewed me, much like we're doing now, and he wanted to know all about it. So I told him all about it. They'd also flown in some fresh buffalo barbecue meat that he took a bite from and made a comment about it, how good it tasted, much like Nixon did. But he also had a napkin, but no receptacle, no waste can. So he was looking around trying to figure out where to throw it away. I said, here, I'll take that. He said, oh, you want the napkin too? I said, sure. And that That got a big laugh, and that was pretty much the end of the show. So this whole thing, I've called it the story won't die. It's 60 years now, this coming September. I didn't think this would ever evolve into what it has become, but it's just been good, clean fun, which we need right now.
The community came together in 1921 to build a new high school, and it was quite a big deal. There were 2 newspapers in Oakland at the time, and both of them boasted about what a wonderful facility this was, state-of-the-art, modern, and this was not something that a lot of towns had back then. And so the newspapers were trying to get people to attend. And on that first day, they had 160 students enrolled. And at that time, you know, high school was kind of a luxury, so it wasn't something every kid went to, and so that was a pretty good number. So through the years, several generations of families went through there. My family is one of those. My brother and I were 3rd-generation students. My parents were high school sweethearts there. And there were a lot of families like ours that just had generation after generation, even 4 generations and probably more. In 2012, they decided to tear down the old high school and build a new one. It was the right time to do it. There was grant money involved, and it was going to help pay to tear down the old high school instead of letting it deteriorate like some unfortunately do in some towns. And so some of us decided we really needed a chance to give the building a proper goodbye. It's a place we all made a lot of memories, a lot of relationships that lasted our whole lives. So we got this event together, and we had 382 graduates sign in that day, walking in through the high school for one last look at the building, several former teachers, and people came from 12 different states just to have this one chance to walk through it one last time. So we put together a program with a video with alumni's memories, speakers, and we got an alumni band together to play the school song one last time. We estimate over 500 people were in the gym that day, and it was just seeing everybody stand and clap along to the school song one last time was just really emotional. You could see the emotion on people's faces. These were people who maybe were cheerleaders in there at one time, basketball players, just played in the band, had PE in this gym. They were taken back 10, 20, 40, 50 years in time, and it was just really a special thing to be a part of. So one thing we wanted to do to preserve the memory of the building was put up a monument. An OHS graduate, Gary Pearson, hand drew a picture of the high school on there, and it is absolutely beautiful. It has brick columns that are actually made of bricks collected from the building. Jim Craven, another OHS graduate, volunteered his services to put that together. And so it stands there as a nice little reminder, a nice memento for us who went there, and a way to show people, maybe these kids who never knew the building, they can look at it and see this was here at one time. Our community was very fortunate to be able to build a new high school. It sits right next to the grade school, just next to the lot where the high school used to be. And it's a very nice facility, just like ours, the old one was back then. They've kind of tried to tie in the old high school a little bit with the new one. They have the old scoreboard from the old gym in there. And in the old high school, we had old class pictures hung up, and you could flip through them and look back through the years, and that was always something we enjoyed doing as high schoolers. And I've seen the teenagers now looking through there, looking for their parents, their aunts and uncles, their grandparents, and just seeing who else they know in there. And it's just nice that they, even though that building's not there, they still feel that same connection that we all felt, and we're all still OHS graduates, and it's just a special thing to be.
The village of Kansas, originally Midway, was founded around 1853, I think. And back in those days, there was one church building that was shared among 3 congregations. That didn't work out very well. And shortly after that, a group of people got together that wanted to start a Christian church in the community. And by 1858, that had organized as Kansas Christian Church. So an original church was built, a wooden structure. Later it got moved to another location, but somewhere around 1906, the congregation got the idea they ought to have a more modern brick building, and so plans began to build a new building. That was completed in October of 1909. I remember in 2010, I had a funeral for a lady named Elizabeth Sexton, lifelong resident of Kansas and a member of our church. And it occurred to me, Elizabeth was 105 when she died in 2010. She was the last person who had living memory of what the landscape of Kansas looked like without that church building. And for some reason, when I went to bed on July 21st, 2011, that was the last thought I had before I went to bed. About 3 a.m. the next morning, July 22nd, I was awakened by someone beating on my door, ringing my doorbell, and yelling, "Your church is on fire, your church is on fire." I hurried up and I got dressed, and as I stepped out into the dark, I could hear the fire whistle going already, and I could see a little bit of red, and I thought to myself, it's not that big of a fire, we'll get it put out, we'll take a week or 2 off, we'll throw some paint and maybe some spackle on it, and everything will be fine. And then the ceiling caved in. And the fire spread, and within hours, our building that we had loved for just over 100 years, 102 years, our building was gone. By the time the sun came up that morning, all that was left were a couple of walls and our bell tower, the bell still up at the top. And it was a few months of clearing the rubble and getting rid of brick and trying to make sense of everything. And then finally in August, we were ready to take the bell tower down, but we knew we needed to get the cornerstone out first. A couple of our guys are in construction, a couple of the guys in the church, and they started chiseling out the cornerstone very, very carefully, little by little. They got it more and more free. So then finally Jeremiah reached up underneath, found a cavity in the rock, and he pulled out this little box. It had been lead soldered shut. What we found was a copy of the Kansas Journal from that week, which included a story about how the Presbyterian Church was about to build a new building, and they were going to use the same contractors that were building the Christian church. We found other newspaper clippings. We found lists of members and lists of members of committees for the church. We found lists of people who worked for the bank and ran the bank. We found postcards and all kinds of pictures. And out of all the treasure, we found 1 penny that someone had thrown into the box at the last minute. So, you know, in the Bible, Jesus says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And I think it occurred to all of us that this little community that they had founded just a few decades before building this church, this community was their heart, and they shared their treasure with us. They shared their heart with us. So by 2013, we finished building the new building, which we love. And when we finally got the cornerstone back in place, and we put the same cornerstone there along with some of the original brickwork, we put our own time capsule in there. And when we put our time capsule in, we put some pictures and we put some newspapers. My old preaching Bible is in there. And we also included letters from our members, sealed letters. I have no idea what they've written, but I asked them, write your stories. Tell your stories to the people who will open this eventually. Tell them about your struggles and your joys. Tell them about your blessings. Tell them what it was like to live when you did, with the problems and the joys that you had. Share your treasure with them, just like the generations before had shared their treasure with us.
The settlers from Germany who came over in 1839 to find religious freedom were very, very concerned about building a church and building schools. Education was crucial to them. So one of the first things they did was build a little parochial school in the neighborhood. Another crucial year was 1861. 2 nuns and a postulate came to town. So thus began the Catholic education in earnest. So we are ending up with a parochial school, a St. Joseph College, and St. Mary's Academy. And in 1908, it's necessary to build Society Hall across from the church. By the time 1920s rolled around, students had outgrown Society Hall and a new high school was built. The high school students then moved to the new high school west of town, and Society Hall was turned over to the grade school. So religion was taught at the high school. It's called an ethics class. And nuns were teaching at the grade school, so religion was going well. The day would start with Mass, and then followed by a catechism class, and then the regular school activities began. That worked well until the baby boomers arrived on the scene again. Several of the students from here had moved away to pursue their careers, and when it was time to start their families, they moved back. However, with growth comes change. Now we're facing an issue. What do we do with the non-Catholic students? How do we handle the going to church and the religion class before school? What must be done?
This is a unique situation. The parish owns the grade school building, leases it to the public school district, and after the morning religion class, it's totally a public school district. And all of this depends on the success of having so many volunteers. It depends on the cooperation and the compromise throughout the years that has gone on between the school district, the parents who are not Catholic, and St. Francis Church. People see the benefits of having the religious education in the mornings, and then this is a good foundation, carries over into the rest of the school day. And most of our students do show a lot of respect and do have good behavior. Now, we're not perfect, not by a long shot, but I mean, you can expect students here in our district are well-behaved and respectful. So in Teutopolis, I think we can say we follow the 3 R's of education: reading, writing, and arithmetic. However, throughout the years, there's been that 4th R, and that's religion. So it's reading, writing, arithmetic, and religion successfully in Teutopolis Unit 50.
The FFA motto is learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, and living to serve. I believe in every bit of it. I've always grown up around agriculture, even though we didn't necessarily live on a farm. My grandfather is a traditional farmer. He had corn, and so I was in the combine whenever I was little, always on the farm, and then helping Grandma bring lunch out to the boys, and that was always a fun experience for me. We originally lived in a subdivision in T-Town, and so we didn't have very many animals, but we started off with rabbits, and we had the plan to move out to Bishop. Whenever I was 9, we finally did. We finished our house, and my dad said that we could get as many animals as we wanted, whatever we wanted. I love animals so much. I love agriculture, and whenever I reached high school, I knew that I wanted to be a part of FFA because it's just such an amazing program, and it's another opportunity for me to learn more about agriculture and the agricultural industry. When I was in grade school, my mentor, Taylor Hartkey, was a really big part of the FFA chapter. Taylor Hartkey was the state treasurer on the first all-female officer team for Illinois. Taylor just really inspired me, and it motivated me to get more involved and want to become more involved in FFA when I reached high school. My dad was in FFA when he was in high school, and he won the Green Hand Award. And my brother, my older brother Ethan, he had also got the Green Hand Award, which is the freshman award that you can get your first year. And so that was one of the goals that I really wanted to achieve, and I actually did. One of the activities that you do is create a supervised agricultural experience book, and so you choose a topic, and my topic is service learning. I came up with the Children's Miracle Network Amenity Project because I was running out of supplies in the hospital for my own personal cancer journey. I ran out of shampoo and conditioner and soap really fast because we were there for over long periods of time. I saw that this was happening and I wanted to make a change. So whenever I got out of the hospital, I started this amenity project, and I enlisted the help of our community, and there's tremendous support. Everyone gathered together. I partnered with businesses, and they donated hotel samples and snacks, and I donated to the hospital. It was just a really amazing project and something that I've continued to do, and the community has still been able to help me with. They really rallied behind me, and that is what I love about Teutopolis. It's such a tight-knit community, and whenever we have someone who is struggling like my family, they really helped, and that's just something that I love. With that amenity drive, I'm the state winner for service learning for FFA and became a national finalist. I wrote 3 grants this past year, and in total we received $7,000. So we applied that and we purchased 7 grow towers along with other supplies, hydroponic growing towers. That was the big purchase of this year. What I want to see for our chapter, I want to see a greenhouse being built, hopefully. And again, that's something that I've been talking about with my FFA advisor. I want to be able to see a livestock barn maybe. I want my family to be on a farm and have the opportunity to be on a farm and raise animals and be a part of agriculture, be a part of the FFA program. That's my dream. That's what I want for my family.
We're sort of an unusual county here because we had very early aviation pioneers, the Flying Roush brothers, and that's who the airport is named for. They started aviation careers back in the early 1900s. And the oldest brother built his first plane in 1909. And all 3 of them had aviation careers, which was very unusual for the time. Now, moving on, the actual airport itself was initiated in the 40s during World War II. It was a satellite airport for the airport at Lawrenceville, which was a World War II military airport. So they did pilot training here, aviation training, and then after the war, the airport was given to the city of Robinson. And then eventually it became a countywide airport. For a small airport, we're considered one of the top airports in Illinois. And the way most small airports are maintained is they have what's called a fixed base operator. And that is a management company that we hire to run the airport. And in our case, it's Sky's the Limit, Howard Hunt and Sandy Stazak, and they're just wonderful people. And they do airport maintenance, they do maintenance on airplanes, they're licensed mechanics, they're licensed flight instructors, we have a ground school going on out there right now. One of the things they do that not very many airports can say, they work on Civil Air Patrol airplanes. Now, a lot of people aren't familiar with the Civil Air Patrol. They're a civilian-based auxiliary to the Air Force. The Air Force owns the planes, but they're flown by civilians. And Sky's the Limit, our fixed-based operator, keeps them flying in Illinois and in some of the adjoining states. They've worked on their planes too. And the Civil Air Patrol does search and rescue. They fly supplies around. If somebody's lost or there's some kind of a disaster, they're usually the first people in the air to do overflights. They do a lot of flight training, getting people interested in aviation careers. So those planes are all flying in Illinois because of our airport right here and the maintenance done on them. And just to talk a little bit more about why we're so important to the county, practically every business in this county is using the airport in some way, and the hospital as well. A lot of people don't realize this, but doctors fly in all the time. We have specialists come in that we would never be able to get otherwise. So we're very, very important to the hospital. Anybody here in town that uses a hospital could be seeing a doctor that flew into our airport. One of the last things I want to talk about is one of the ways we give back. Okay, besides being such an important part of the community, we want people to come out and have some fun out there. So every other year, we have an air show. The air show itself is just a fantastic event, and it's free, so we don't keep track of how many people come exactly, but I can say we have thousands, and we have all kinds of things. We have the air show itself, which is the planes flying. We have vendors, food, trucks, we have booths, and just all kinds of things for people to do. They can sit and watch, they can visit. We have activities for the kids. We have helicopter rides. It's just a great time, and we're really, really proud of it. We work really a whole year getting ready for it, and we want to serve the whole community. We want everybody involved, and we just want to be a part of the community and help.
There are a lot of people that are from Hudsonville, and they moved away as they grew older. And since we decided to start having this event, you know, the weekend right after Thanksgiving, a lot of them have decided to stay later. You know, they won't go home until Sunday instead of on Friday or Saturday. And that means a lot, not only to us, you know, that are running the event that want it to go well, but for those families that get that extra time with those that they might not normally. Well, that first year we had 48 trees, and a majority of them were just for the local businesses. Well, as the years have gone by, last year was our 9th year to have the trees. We had 185 trees total. Of those 185 trees, we had the names of 224 lost loved ones. So this is something that the families can come together, and it's really special. It's a way to keep those people, you know, involved, even if it is, you know, in a different type of way. We have people, sometimes the trees that are in remembrance of lost loved ones, they'll laminate photos, or they'll put photos inside of ornaments. And so the trees are beautiful not only at night when they're lit up, but they're so special to look at during the day when they're not lit as well. When we first started this, I didn't have the same type of attitude, you know, towards it. We just had a family tree, and it was my mom and dad and my brother and his wife and my husband and I and our 5 kids. Well, since that time that we started in 2020, we lost my brother, and he was a U.S. Army veteran. When you lose somebody, especially if it's suddenly, that makes it 10 times harder. That year, instead of adding another tree, because we already had our family tree, we went one step further and added a beautiful LED light up flag that's along the gate that goes down into the dock area. Every single tree that is in memory of somebody means just as much to them as the one for my brother does to me. It makes you feel so good to be able to, you know, drive by every evening and see it lit up, and there's really not anybody within our community that's not impacted in some way or another.
It was started in March 2001. We were built on everybody's throwaways. The property was given to my mother by a farmer, acre and a half, for free, just to take it over. So they started building a place to live down there. She had a coffee shop in Rose Hill. She was looking to expand that. Rose Hill is actually a dry county, dry township, so she couldn't get a liquor license there. So when that property was given to her down by the river, she applied for a liquor license then through the county and was given one. So our roof came from Sherman-Williams after the storm. Our rafters came from the veterinary clinic. The red doors that you see on our garage came from the Rose Hill School. And we try to recycle as much as we can from anything. When you come out there, you see that we try to recycle tires, things like that. Our memory boards are old satellites that we've taken apart and made as memory boards. We've always tried to recycle things as much as possible. You know, I took over in 2005. I moved over here and took over in 2005 to help them out. So it's a very family-run business. They took up, MVP was for Munch and Valina Patchers, which is my parents' name. That's who started it. And me and my family came down after I had my daughter. We moved down and now she's running it too. So it's kind of just moved on from family to family, generation to generation. So yeah, we have had some problems at MVP with flooding. We are right on the river, but I've always said it's just Mother Nature's way of us cleaning out our corners and everything cleaned back up. Our worst one was in 2008, June 7th of 2008. It was over the top of my pool table inside. Yeah, it was a bad one. We lost the whole flooring of our stage because it was a floating stage, because it was a movable stage. We lost all of that. We lost a lot that year, but we had lots and lots of help. Our community is really good about coming together and helping things like that. We are a dive bar, a unique dive bar on the river is what we are. But it's family oriented during the day too. You know, very family oriented and have lots of different things for everybody to do when they come down there. It's kind of like a recreational park. Like I said, we have fishing, camping, we have concerts, we have micro wrestling, we have all kinds of different, we've had wood carving, we have a couple mascots. Our new one is our new pig. It's Peppa the pig. She's our new pig. And then we have Mr. Speckles. That's our rooster that runs around. Everybody likes to pet our animals when they come and enjoys getting their pictures taken with our new ones. Hopefully Mrs. Peppa will be not ornery like her last one was. She was very, very ornery. Yeah, and our dollars. You gotta come hang a dollar at the holler too. We have dollars. One person started it, and now we have thousands and thousands inside our bar, all over the place. So that's what people come do. They put their dollars up, and now we can start doing locks too. So now you can start putting your locks up when you come. But yeah, we always try to do something different and try to just be different from everybody else. We do a couple different runs a year. We do our Veterans Run. This is going to be our 7th annual Veterans Run. We had 206 Jeeps attend last year, so we're hoping to beat that this year. All the money gets donated back to veteran things. I donate to the Operation Homefront. We donate to Danville. We've donated some to some vets and homeless vets in Terre Haute. There's probably a weekend that doesn't go by at MVP that a Jeep run is not stopping by there. And we're always donating to all them causes. All of us bars in Jasper County try to donate back to all these things. I hope to add on. I want to do a addition where you can sit out in the winter or in the summertime and sit out and look out the river. Still be warm in the wintertime or cool in the summertime, because that's and hopefully they'll be here for many, many, many years to come, hopefully.
Burl's life in Jasper County did start in Hunt City, what's now known as Hunt, and Burl's name was Burl Ives, I-C-L-E. As he was growing up, he had the interest of music. He sang in the church at a very young age, and his grandmother also loved music, and particularly folk songs from England and Scotland and Ireland. And so early, very early, he learned those folk songs. And that sparked an interest that would continue. Burl graduated from Jasper County High School. He graduated with the class of 1927. As he graduated from high school and was to go on, he went on up to Eastern Illinois. They called it Teachers College at that time. One day, about his junior year, so you see he did continue on for quite a while, and he was sitting in a philosophy class, and he was bored to tears. There was a map on the wall, and he thought, what am I doing here? And he got up and kept on walking. He went to the dorm, got his clothes, and at that time his banjo, and started walking. He said he was going to go to the east and he was going to see all those places he knew there were on the map. He moved on to New York City, and that's where he got a lot of his fame. And he got more musical studying done. He apparently took drama courses as well and got involved in stage, and that led to his positions in screen. As he went into the stage, he was in a number of stage plays, but he went on from there. He went to a stage play that was called The Big Country, and that was a stage play first. Then Hollywood wanted to make it into a movie, and he went to Hollywood to make that movie. As he was involved in the movie, he did win a supporting actor Academy Award and also Golden Globe for that role. He was in a number of different movies. And as we know, he kept recording all of this time. He was recording music, folk music. He traveled. He studied the music of the people wherever he was. He finally retired at the age of 80, and he and his wife moved up to the Washington seacoast, and there they lived for their remaining years, for his remaining years. They brought his body back to Jasper County. This was in 1995. And when his funeral was held, it was a spectacular event for the county. And people came, and they wanted to take part in that service. But they had no idea that a big tour bus was going to pull up, and it was Mel Tillis and his band, and they did the entertaining for that day. As we see, his gravesite is marked with a lovely stone that was actually designed by a local artist. And it is truly a thing to see at the Mound Cemetery, which is near Hunt City. At one point, Mrs. Ives was approached because you remember that Burl's big role was as a narrator of the Rudolph movie. And as he was in that movie as Sam the Snowman, the community knew that, and Mrs. Ives had, for their Christmas decorations, all of the characters on her front lawn. And she allowed us to, if we could find transportation, to bring them back to Jasper County and copy them. So for 1 year, we had her version of the Rudolph characters on the lawn. And each year, during our times of Christmas, we put those up there as decorations. We have decided that we would have some characters walking around the square, so we have outfits for all of them as well. We also honored him with the building of the Heritage Information Center that is on the prominent square uptown. Routes 130 and 33 come together at that corner, so nobody misses him. We did have a bench put there so that people could have a photo op, and you would be amazed at the number of people who come in and sit down on that bench and still today remember Burl Ives. 1909, birth year. That's been a long time. His music just continues to live on, for sure.
around 2000, 2001, we started the memorial out at the park. They wanted to incorporate the machine gun memorial, which was the archway, into the memorial, so they decided to have the school kids draw up a design, and that's how they come about the memorial that we have today. 2006, I become the commander of the American Legion, and I have been commander ever since. We participated in the 4th of July parades, the Memorial Day ceremonies, veteran ceremonies. The 4th of July is a real big thing here at Diedrich, and the American Legion always ran the pork booger stand for that. And just about all the proceeds that the American Legion made went right back into the community. This last September, our Legion got really low on members, and we had to relinquish our charter, so there's no more American Legion in Diedrich. But the guys that did belong felt they wanted to contribute to the village, and so when we sold the building and everything, we took what money we made from it and we donated. We donated, I think, $10,000 to the memorial. We donated another $20,000 to the new Rights building, and we donated $10,000 to the fire department for equipment. And we purchased 2 scholarship funds, which are $1,000 apiece for graduates from high school. And all the Legion has helped the area very much. And the memorial, it started out to be a small memorial, but as people can see, it has really come to be a very beautiful memorial. And our people are very proud of it. I feel very much at home here. For one thing, it shows what all people were willing to serve in this area. And I even got a daughter on there. She enlisted right out of high school into the Air Force, and that I'm very proud of. And I had 22 guys in my company get killed, and I bought stones for each one of them, which inlaid. My company's emblem is a diamond, and it's in the shape of a diamond in the memorial. And I go out there every once in a while. It just gives me. But yes, that memorial means very much, and on Memorial Day, we fly flags around for every guy that did not come back. And I think the village is very, very close to their veterans. They support them very much. So many people do not expect to see what they see when they come to this town. And when they turn down that street, it totally shocks them to see what is there. And for any veteran, I think it really gets them in the heart. And I think it makes them feel so much better seeing something like that.
We take volunteerism very seriously here. We even require our high school graduating seniors to have a certain number of volunteer hours before they can graduate. And so it shows the next generation how important that is to us here, to be a part of the community, and everybody has to do their part. So I'm on the board for EJ Water, and EJ Water is a good example of Diedrich because it was somebody in a meeting who said, we can do this. Why can't we do this? So EJ Water was formed, and it quickly became one of the biggest water co-ops in the state of Illinois. And people say, well, how did that happen in Diedrich? Well, why not Diedrich? We get a lot of questions. Like how can a town your size raffle off a house? Or how are you the smallest town in the whole country to put a whole machine gun company together in World War I? Or how are you on the list of the top 10 growing towns or fastest growing communities in the state of Illinois? And I like to say, why not, Dietrich? Why not? Why not, Dietrich? And people don't just show up, but they show up well. They leave their personal agenda at the door. And we realize that community development isn't just the business's business, but it's everybody's business. And it's a task that's never over. We'll always be working on this. We'll always have the next goals we want to accomplish. And people don't just donate money, they donate time. And a lot of people aren't even going to see the benefits of what they've done in their lifetime, but they do it anyway. Whether your kids go to school here or not, whether your address is Dietrich or whatever it is, but our definition of community is broad and far-reaching, and we know whatever happens inside the community helps everyone outside the community and vice versa. So I think volunteerism is important in any community, but I think the attitude of our volunteers is what's important, because anybody can volunteer, but to volunteer with the right attitude and the positivity. I almost think the positivity story is as important as the volunteerism side of it, because we know how important we are to the whole picture.
One of the visions that Dr. Hulsketter had for Altamont was Frog Pond Nursery School. He built Frog Pond Nursery School in 1984, and he built it on ground that he had that was known as Norrie's Yard. And Frog Pond was named after Dr. Hulsketter's boyhood school that was in the country in Altamont. We opened our doors in the fall of 1983. The first teachers were Vera Schrader, Kathy Quarter, and April Stimke. April Stimke left Frog Pond after a few years, and Patty Blummer came to be a teacher at Frog Pond. We have had many great teachers throughout the years. Roxana Winning was one of our teachers that came, and Roxana taught Spanish to the boys and girls. In 1990, Dr. Hulsketter gifted the building of Frog Pond to the Lutheran schools. The Lutheran school owns the building, but Frog Pond itself, the business, is owned by the teachers. One thing about Frog Pond, it's privately owned. And because it's privately owned, we get to talk about Jesus, we could pray, we could have Bible stories and sing songs. Frog Pond has gone on many field trips. In October, the fire department would come pick us up. We'd get to ride the equipment truck. In December, we would go to the Senior Center at the Municipal Building. We'd go to the Hillsborough Bank or to the Lutheran Care Center, and we would sing songs and do finger plays for all the residents, get them in the Christmas spirit. In January, we'd walk across the street to go to Dr. Sahi and Huey's dentist office. They always had a crocodile that they would say, "Here, let's teach you how to brush the crocodile's teeth," and they would do that. Then in springtime came and we would walk downtown. We would go to the First Mid Bank and see the vault. We would go to the post office, look at all their stamps, and to the library to listen to the great stories from all the librarians. Then at the Ballard Nature Center, we would walk the trails and see all the good exhibits that they had there in the center. Another thing we would do is have our picnic the last day of school. On the picnic day, we would have a state trooper come with their squad car, and the boys and girls got to get in the squad car, act like they were driving it, and even push the siren. But the big event that we had every year was our Frog Pond graduation. And in the 41 years that we have had a graduation outside, there's only been 2 times that we had a rain out, that we had to go to the Altamont Lutheran Interparish School. There have been 1,870 students that have graduated from Frog Pond. In 2008, we were presented a flag that had flown over the United States Capitol in honor of our 25th anniversary. This flag was presented to us by Kyle Stimke, a member of the first graduating class. Frog Pond means that there have been many, many boys and girls who got to go places to play with the other kids, learn to do different things, get to be a 10-star general. They really enjoyed it. You can just see when they walk in the door, they're so excited to come in there. We are so blessed that Dr. Hulsketter had the vision to build Frog Pond Nursery School so that many, many students could be a Frog Pond graduate.
in the early years. We had things like ice houses and livery stables and general stores and things of that nature. Altamont is very fortunate in the fact that we have several railroads that pass through town, and we have the old National Road, which became then U.S. Highway 40, and now the present-day Interstate 70. And those have been very influential in Altamont's progress. Businesses then, over the years, transpired. Vehicles became more readily available to persons, and people would come to town in their car. And we had new car dealerships in the old days. So we had 5 new car dealerships, 5 implement dealerships in those days. Longevity has been one common thing. We have a number of businesses that have been 50, 60, 70, even 100 years that have been through several families in some cases. In the early years, business was kind of a way of gathering. It was a way of trading information, what was going on in your family and how was the crops doing. And businesses had awnings in front of their stores, and they had benches, and it was a gathering place. And businesses would then also put together like drawings. So they would have cash drawings they would give away, and that would attract people to come, and it becomes a bandstand. In our community center, we don't have a town square like most towns do. Altamont has a town triangle. And that was largely due to how the streets were laid out because of the railroad being at an angle. And on that triangle was the bandstand, and it was a gathering place. As I said, bands would play, and the high school band would play for concerts. And as the time where Altamont grew some and people needed homes, so the campground became selling lots, and it became a subdivision. And consequently, from the Frederick King family, the Town and Country subdivision began, and with that also a construction company, which was Frederick King Construction. The businesses that have been here probably the longest are businesses such as my own. Started as Grobengieser Sons. It's changed through the years, but that business sold appliances back as early as 1914. We have a couple funeral homes in town, Cool Funeral Home and Giesking Funeral Home, both 60+ years in business, family businesses. We have A&H Implement, also a family business, 60+ years, 70 years. But probably the most longest running business has been the continuation of the Altamont News, established shortly after Altamont became a city or a village, if you will. Today, businesses have changed a bit. We have, with the interstate, as I said earlier, we have the motels, and we have a beautiful event center by the Ramsey family, along with the Cobblestone Motel, and we have 2 other hotels and motels in town for people to stay. At one time, we had several restaurants near the interstate. The Causet family had a hotel, and they also had a restaurant, and that has now given way to fast food chains. McDonald's, Subway, Joe's Pizza are all in town, Jack Flash, all part of the businesses that migrated from the interstate times. Larger businesses in town, the nursing home is one large business. The Irwin Seating, a large manufacturing seating for sports venues, manufactured right here in Altamont. Deb's Catering Businesses has been an ongoing business, employing 50+ employees. Today, again, we have a grocery store, we have a bakery, we have doctor's offices, and a plethora of businesses that have ongoing and all been thriving, making Altamont a healthy and prospering and thriving place, all part of Altamont's business community. I think the connection to people, knowing their situations, knowing people, and the trust, I think that's what has kept many businesses going through the years. It's not just the livelihood for the business owner themselves, but having an interest and the genuine interest in other people. It's not just selling a product, but it's providing a service. And I think that's been important. And whether that's been your baker or your doctor or your funeral director or your insurance agent or whomever it might have been, I think that's an important thing. That's what's kept it thriving and things going. So people come because they know who you are, and they built that trust.